Welcome to the meeting of the City Council of Half Moon Bay on August the 15th, 2023. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brownstone?
Here.
Councilmember Rarback?
Here.
Councilmember Reddick?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jimenez?
Here.
Mayor Penrose?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Will everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the approved agenda is approved. Proclamations and presentations. We've got a Mid-Coast Community Council update.
We're going to skip that one this meeting, Mayor Penrose.
We are skipping the Mid-Coast Community Council update. Mayor's announcements. There are two items that I think are of interest to folks. One is on August the 17th, there is movie night at the library. They're showing Interstellar. Oh, great. It's run by the Village of the Coast Side. On August 19th, the Rotary is presenting our annual Lobster Fest. Starts at 5 p.m. at the IDES Hall. Bring your bib and come and enjoy some sloppy, lovely lobster. I'm going to ask our attorney to tell us if there's a report out from recent closed sessions meetings. Catherine Enberg.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So the Council did meet in closed session prior to this regular meeting to discuss two items. One, conference with real property negotiators regarding price and terms of a potential lease agreement for the Opportunity Center of the Coast Side located at 637 Main Street. Nothing to report out of those, but direction was provided to the negotiating parties. And then secondly, the council conducted the annual performance evaluation of the city manager. Nothing to report out. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to mention that we have with us tonight a special guest who's going to later on give a presentation, and that's our county sheriff, Christina Corpus. So say hello to Christina and chat her up if you get a chance. We now move to city manager updates to council.
Thank you. Great. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, and community. My name is Karen Decker. I'm the Economic and Community Vitality Manager in the City Manager's Office, and I can't tell you how excited I am to introduce this project. It is the Downtown Streetscapes Master Plan. It is a project that had a lot of existing work and vision around downtown revitalization. The Coastside Recovery Initiative is part of the recommendations that were produced last year. One of those recommendations, actually from Team Vibrant, invited all of us to redesign the streetscape on Heritage Main. And the thinking behind it was to improve mobility and economic activity and vibrancy. And as a result of that recommendation and other existing work, this made it into the capital improvement program. It was realized in that way. The project goals for reimagining downtown, and in the heart of a lot of Team Vibrant conversations is that first bullet point, creating a more attractive, more accessible, more economically vibrant downtown. It's also really important. We have a lot to preserve. We have a lot to be proud of. We have a lot of culture and heritage in this town. And so preservation and enhancing the existing character is very important. Also prioritizing improvements that benefit both residents and visitors, something that I think a lot of downtowns and communities struggle with, is definitely also at the heart of this project. So the city received over 10 proposals in response to a request for proposals earlier this year. That was a record number of proposals, I believe. We had 2 rounds of review. We interviewed the top 3 firms. It was a very competitive process, and the city selected Tool Design, a nationally recognized urban design firm, to lead this important work. This graphic is just intended to be demonstrative, to let you know that we have a robust project schedule. That first block in green is summer and fall of this year, and it represents an existing conditions review. That means that there has been a lot of hard work that has already gone into studies. There's already investments that have been made. Cal Poly produced a study. We have a parks master plan, we have a bicycle and pedestrian master plan, we have our land use plan. So there's really, really great shoulders from which to stand on. And the firm is taking a look at all of these existing documents and the totality of downtown, not just Heritage Maine, in the context of all of these ideas and studies and research that have already been conducted. This is also a really fun phase. It's visioning. So it's imagining what it can be. And a lot of the workshops that are going to be conducted in September are going to ask questions like, how do you experience downtown? What do you want to make sure gets preserved about downtown? What do you think is an untapped potential? And then this green table represents upcoming community engagement opportunities, and that's just for the month of September. I didn't want to overwhelm, so this is just kind of a teaser about what's to come. I want to draw your attention to the September 5th meeting. That will be a special meeting of this council where you can meet with Tool Design for an hour. They will do a presentation, and they want to engage with you directly about your ideas, about your vision, and kind of get your early input in this longer process. As your eyes kind of go through the other convenings of commissions and committees, I want to draw your attention to the Bold Discovery Workshops. That, also known as charrettes, they're going to take place 3 days in a row at the Half Moon Bay Library all day. And the Tool Design team is going to be here. They're going to convene stakeholders. They're going to have an open studio where they're sketching in real time as people are sharing ideas. And then we will be strategically inviting stakeholders during predetermined interview slots. It's going to be a really robust, fun, exploratory exercise, and it's something that they specialize in. It's something that set them apart in terms of their proposal. We were really impressed with how thoughtful and culturally competent and creative they approach community outreach and engagement. And with that, I just wanted to let you know that we are launching the program. We have a webpage on the city's website. There's a beautiful QR code. Thank you, Irma Acosta, for designing the page. And we have a designated email address. Anybody who emails that address, it will go directly to John Dowdy and myself. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I would like to say just that I'm really thrilled that the current group that is looking at our downtown is looking at everything that's been done so far. I mean, that all of the work that has been put into looking at our downtown is still pretty viable work, and it is still pertinent. So rather than reinventing the wheel, I'm glad that they're looking at what's been done already.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question, comment. Has anything been done about the gate, the entrance gate on 92? Has it been brought up? Because we can have a beautiful downtown, Half Moon Bay, but if there's no signage or a
Right.
gate that welcomes everybody.
We do have, yes, thank you for bringing that up. That is such a legitimate need, and I recall at the priority setting workshop, a member of the Downtown Association sharing a survey expressing concern about businesses not having a lot of foot traffic and being concerned they might not survive the year, and that potentially a sign on 92 could help. I've heard that a lot of people drive westbound on 92 and they just make a right to go to the beach, but what about the left where there's restaurants and retail and shopping? This could be a quick win. When the tool design team came to do an all-day site visit and to meet with some stakeholders and city staff, part of that tour strategically took them down 92 specifically to consider signage. Because while a more robust wayfinding sign program may be down the road, it's nice to know the need now because we can start with something simple. And so actually Matthew and I have been talking with members of the Downtown Association and the Chamber, and we think we've identified an existing site that we can move on fairly quickly. We've looked at the encroachment permit possibility, we've looked at some design possibilities, and actually the community stakeholder group for the Streetscapes project, who will convene on September 12th, part of their agenda will be to look at a mock-up of such a sign on 92. So I just want to reassure you that we hear you. We think this can be a quick win, and we realize that businesses really need our support, and this is a really, feasible way that we can show them in a concrete way. We hear you, and we hope this helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Other council members, questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Karen. That sounds very exciting.
Good evening, Council. I'm speaking on behalf of Carlo, who couldn't be here tonight, but he helped to put on as a staff side of National Night Out. National Night Out, I think all of you are familiar with, and the community's pretty well familiar with now, was held August 1st, and we had an excellent turnout and an excellent event, and we really want to thank our partners, the sheriff and crew, the fire, CERT was great, CARES team, our library staff, our city staff that went out, you as council members, and everybody else that came out to the community gatherings, and those particularly that decided to host and move forward with that. And I think the overwhelming issue this year was like it is many years. It was wet and foggy, and it's Half Moon Bay. So, but that was an overwhelming comments that came out. We had 26 initial resident organizers, which was 3 more than the prior year. What we will say is that because of various components of that, some of those consolidated. So we ended up with 20 actual events. Some of those merged together, but still 20 events around the community. And our estimates were about 1,000 folks who attended. We also had a couple of events that were outside of city limits. And as you I think are aware of, that this event is put on by the city, generally focused to city residents, but we had folks interested outside of the city limits, and CERT stepped up and provided funding from money that they have to assist those folks. And we see this coming into the next year with the opportunity to really talk to our counterparts at the county and make this truly a coast side event and not look at this necessarily just by jurisdictional boundaries. So that's something kind of coming out of this program. And again, thanks to CERT for stepping up and providing the assistance for those folks to have their events. And finally, really with this, that we had we have been doing some survey work. We're going to be looking at what those comments are and putting those together. We did get a few comments and quotes out there, and you'll notice a couple of them were specific despite the weather. But it was a tough one, but it always is. But great turnout, and we're looking forward to continuing the success of National Night Out and working in any way and everywhere we can to make it even bigger and better next year. Thanks. That's it. Questions, comments?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Well, no questions, but I actually attended. I was riding my bicycle, so I attended 3 different parties. It was a party animal. It was fun. It was good to be out there.
Thank you for doing that.
Good evening, Council. Miles Bezerginia, Public Works Director. I'm here tonight to just bring an update on our upcoming fat, oils, greases, and sand ordinance update. That's a mouthful. FOGS for short. We are going to be putting a community meeting out with stakeholders, restaurants, and other businesses that have FOG discharges into our sanitary sewer system. And part of the reason for this is our system is a very specific system that has a lot of areas of concern, especially when it comes to fats, oils, and greases, and what impacts it has to the conveyance of storm sewers, the sewer water, wastewater, and how that impacts potential spills and those things. And so this ordinance is looking at making sure that our businesses are up to current standards. So we're looking at doing a quick update on our ordinance. Right now we have information preliminary up on the website at hmbcity.com/sewer. And we will be putting together a community meeting with stakeholders that would be impacted by this. So folks can anticipate getting information via email and mailers, and a future date will be put up there as far as that timing of that meeting. Right now, we're looking at potentially doing it in mid-September and looking at the library space. But once that's confirmed, we'll put that on the website and we'll come back to council to give that update.
Thank you, Maz. Questions, comments, council? Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to present from over here. I am proud to announce that we are finally launching the Pedal for a Purpose e-bike grant. This grant is in collaboration with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. And back in early 2022, they adopted the Alternative Congestion Relief and Transportation Demand Management Plan. We had applied for the grant and we were awarded the grant, so now we have $200,000 to spend. We are going to be using that money in collaboration with BikeWorks, Straight Wheel Cycling, and two of our nonprofits, ALAS and Coastside Hope. ALAS and Coastside Hope will be referring recipients to the city. Each recipient will receive a $5,000 voucher to use at either BikeWorks or Straight Wheel Cycling, where they can purchase an e-bike, helmet, and lock. We are hoping to have 30 to 35 recipients, and there is some eligibility requirements. The requirements are that you must live and work within 12 miles of Half Moon Bay. You must be a low-income teacher, farm worker, or hospitality worker, and you must agree to sign the pledge. And the pledge requirements are that you agree to take a safety course, that you will use your bike 3 times per week, you intend to use your bike for 6 months, you will not sell your bike or give it away for 12 months, and you intend to live in Half Moon Bay for 12 months. If you don't like your bike, it's not working out, the other requirement is you just return it to the city. This is to help with congestion relief within town, and so we're hoping by getting these bikes out, there will be many needed recipients that can use this transportation to get to and from work a lot easier. They're not relying on cars on the road. And I'm extremely happy to announce that we have our first recipient from Coastside Hope. Judith has nominated someone, and so we just got their information today, and we'll be moving forward with getting them their bike this week. Yeah. Any questions?
Yes, I do. The grant was for $200,000?
It was for $200,000, and then the city's doing a 10% match, so it's $220,000 that we have
And
to use.
that will give us how many bikes?
30 to 35. There were some other agreements in the grant, maintenance agreements with BikeWorks and Straight Wheel Cycling, so that the recipients can have maintenance on their bikes, and it's not just like a one and done deal.
Okay, so the money is not going just for the bikes?
Correct.
Because
So-
it looked like we could get a lot more bikes out of
Absolutely.
$220,000,
Yes. So
yeah.
we're partnering with Coastside Mountain Bikers, I believe. They will be receiving some funding for tools to help with their nonprofit as well, and then the funding for the maintenance agreements.
Okay, and then you also said that people have to work within 10 miles of the
12
city?
miles.
12 miles of the city, but then you have on there that they have to live in the city for 12 months. You mean they have to live
within
12 miles of
Yes.
the city? Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you. This is very exciting. We've been waiting a long time.
I know.
And so they can get bikes of their choosing. They can get something with a basket on it. They could get a three-wheeler. They could get whatever it is that is available for the $5,000
As
or,
long as it's an e-bike that is class 1 or class 2, not class 3.
right.
And so the bike shops are aware of that, and they will help personalize which bike, you know, based off of your statistics, how tall you are, if you're a man or you're a woman, if it's a step over, or I don't know the precise term for bike, but there's step overs and then like lower sections for women, I guess. I don't know what it's called, I'm sorry. But whatever the bike shop deems appropriate is what they will be set up with.
Excellent. Very exciting. Council?
Yeah, charging stations, do these bikes require a special charging station? And are we gonna be providing support for that, like for people that live at the farms?
Absolutely. So they don't require any specific special charging port. Most of them is just a basic plug-in. And the city is more than willing to help with charging support at any of our locations if necessary. Yeah, some batteries do come out, some stay in. It just depends on which brand that the recipient will go with. And $5,000 is more than enough for an e-bike, helmet, and lock. We expect that, you know, that's a high guess. We expect most of our recipients to be spending less than that, and then our hope is that we can use those leftover funds for even more recipients.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Maggie.
The cool kids sit up here, right? Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and members of the community. I'm here to discuss the exciting return of our Future Leaders Civics Academy. We have not held this since 2019, since the pandemic. If you're not familiar, this program is designed for high school students looking to get involved in their community and learn more about the inner workings of local government. Our goal for the program is to help youth in our community develop a better understanding of civic engagement and the processes that go into it, foster better relationships with fellow students in HMB, help them create the skills that they need to get involved in their community in a meaningful way, and further their understanding of the myriad of resources that exist here in Half Moon Bay and on the coast side. This year, we will be focusing on the Coastside Recovery Initiative through the lens of the youth in Half Moon Bay, with a focus on mental health and sustainability, among other topics. We will be working with the Youth Leadership Institute to help design each session to best serve our younger community members. The program will run September 27th, October 4th, October 11th, and October 18th. The application will open on August 28th and will close September 22nd. The application will be posted on our website at hmbcity.com/youthcivics. So if you know any youth that are interested in participating, please let us know. We will be working very closely with our partners at the high school to both table at the high school for recruiting, and we're gonna create a super fun video to like show the kids. And we will also be offering community service hours to help entice these kids to join and get everyone super excited about government.
How many students are we talking?
We had, I believe, like 25, like 23 to 25 last year. So hoping that we get that same amount. I think we would go up to 30. We also want to make sure that it's, you know, we have a good enough environment for them to understand all the materials, and, you know, 50, I mean, but we also don't want to turn anyone away. So we're hoping for a good turnout.
Are you going to be feeding them as well?
Of course.
All right.
Yeah. It's going to be the big letters, free dinner. That'll be
Right.
the first part.
I like it.
Free dinner, community service hours, promised. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Questions, council? It's a wonderful program. Thank you very much, Colleen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and community. Very excited after a very long and arduous journey for our short-term rentals. As of last Thursday, the Coastal Commission accepted and certified your City Council adopted short-term rental ordinance. A big thank you to Joaquin and our community members. They were instrumental in helping us get exactly what we were looking for. So thank you. And so now we're ready to welcome the short-term rental operators into City Hall. We've got our website updated. It's ready to rock and roll. We're in the process of adding in our FAQs, our application and checklist. And then I will be notifying all current operators at the end of the month about coming in for registration, making it an easy process, and looking to finally get some work done on this. So thank you guys for this. It was, like I said, long, arduous journey, but we're here and we got what we wanted. We're good to go.
Great. And an FAQ is a frequently asked question?
That is correct.
Thank you.
If you guys have any questions for me or anything about the ordinance, just feel free.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, John Dowdy again. Just a reminder that Thursday is the 880 Stone Pine Community Meeting, and it will be in this room 6:30 to 8:30. We hope people will be here at 6:30 or earlier so we can settle in, we can get going and roll through, I think, a great program. We'll have a review of a conceptual plan that has been prepared by San Mateo County, and those can be found at the hmbcity.com/stonepinehousing. And this is just that conceptual plan. If you want to pull that up, that's available at that site. There's other information. And there are updated FAQs, frequently asked questions, that have been updated there. And we look forward to seeing the community on Thursday. Thank you.
Hey, John, in looking at that, can you bring that the slide that shows the current plan? It's difficult to read because the type is so small, but some of these units right now are conceived to be 3-bedroom, some are 2-bedroom, and some are 1-bedroom?
The current concept accounts for 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 1-bedroom units. That exact mix still to be determined based on need and somewhat site planning issues as well, but for the most part, it's really about what the demands and the needs are, but certainly a mixture of those and of all three categories.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Wonderful, this is very exciting. Can't wait for Thursday night.
And that concludes our updates for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to public forum. And our first speaker is Jaime Vasquez.
Good afternoon, Mayor Penrose and City Council members. My name is Jaime Vasquez. I'm a field rep from 217 that covers the county of San Mateo. And I come today to discuss an important topic that we should consider when it comes to planning for our community's workforce, labor standards, like healthcare, state certified apprenticeship, and local hiring. These factors play a significant role in creating a strong and thriving workforce. Having a state certified apprenticeship program provides policies that require the use of apprenticeship, develop a pool of skilled labor in the area who can work on our future projects. Our apprenticeship program success depends on the apprenticeship being able to secure work opportunities. Without work opportunities, apprentices are likely to leave the industry for lower paying careers. Policies such as pre-qualification helps ensure that contractors hire apprentices and are doing their part to build our community construction workforce. The lack of stable healthcare is a main factor that keeps workers away from the industry, leading to labor shortages we are seeing in construction. Policies that require contractors to offer their workers family healthcare will raise standards in the construction industry while also ensuring that employers who do offer healthcare can compete on a level playing field. Local hire. Local hire policies help ensure that new developments benefit all members in the community, as more and more construction workers are forced into mega commutes. Local hire policies can help bring stability to families in the community, ensuring workers can spend time with their families instead of spending 4 more hours commuting. Requiring developers to choose responsible general contractors will ensure that men and women building these projects will not be taken advantage of. Pre-qualification language will raise standards in the construction industry and uplift the workforce and deliver a better product for the end user. My team and I look forward to reaching out to have more in-depth conversation with Half Moon Bay. Thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the name of your organization.
Local 217, Carpenters Union.
Great, thank you. Our next speaker is Bruce Eldridge.
Nice to be here tonight, Mayor. Good to see you, members of the council, and the assembled police officers as well. I have two issues. I am a refugee from New York City. I moved out here 30 years ago. Thank God I was pardoned and released on good behavior. I found this town by accident one night. It was a foggy night in July 1994. It was foggy, and nobody was on the street. It was quiet. It was rustic. It was peaceful, the antithesis of New York City. And I said, yeah, I'm going to live here. I managed to do that, and I worked here in San Francisco as well. Now, one of the things that attracted me to Half Moon Bay was its grandeur, and the rusticity even added to that. I'm glad to know we're doing more with our downtown as well. That will add to it. But we, and I mean everybody in this room, have a problem. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, we have a noise pollution problem on Main Street, everywhere else in town. Motorcycles, unrestricted tailpipes, decibel ear-breaking noise, and it's increased over the years. I would like to see a robust program by our police department, San Mateo officers, to do more to enforce regulations. I don't know how many citations have been given, but the noise has increased since COVID. We have been discovered. And with it comes more traffic and louder vehicles, especially Harley-Davidson motorcycles. I'm a BMW motorcycle driver, much quieter. But this horrible, really, noise situation, if it goes as unenforced, it makes it difficult to see that rustic and quiet town that I moved to. And I think if you've lived here, you've heard it. They've gone past your house, but I don't see a police presence on Main Street. There's pros and cons in enforcing laws like that. But when you see wheelies from motorcycles and cars driving 50, 60 miles an hour on Main Street, it makes you wonder, where is the enforcement? That's my primary issue. Another issue is, last year I received a $300 fine for making a right turn at a stoplight. Didn't stop for it, didn't see it, ran right through it. Cop was there, $300. And I have noticed in the last 3, 4, 5 years that various police officers do not bother signaling. They're not showing their intention to make a turn for which everybody else will get a fine. It should be equal justice for everyone. I've already talked to our wonderful sheriff about this. I think she's going to pass that information on. And it's a small thing. I don't mean to be peevish about it. But if I'm paying $300, I'm obeying the law, that's for sure. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Bruce. Have Ann Reichbush.
Hello, City Council, everybody else. A lot of you already know me, I know that. And
can you get closer to the mic?
Yes.
I know it's
there.
Thank you.
A lot of what I have to say is right in tune with what Karen was talking about, the downtown preservation project and also the bicycle project. I'm a stubborn pedestrian, as some of you know me. I will not take a car if I'm on the coast. And that's who I am. I moved to Half Moon Bay in 1987, and I've been a teacher in the local public schools since 1992. I love this town and the beautiful coast that we are lucky to have so close by. I've always been very concerned about the environment and have been involved in a number of cleanup projects in the past. I now work at the high school, and I'm really concerned about the litter in Half Moon Bay. How can we ask our high school students to keep their campus clean when the first thing they see when they go down that hill is that horrible mess in that lot between 7-Eleven and Rite Aid? It's just unacceptable. Of course, there's the situation under the bridge, of course, and I used to live on the other side of the highway, and I walked to Safeway, and there wasn't that village along the creek, but that's a whole nother series of problems that I think that needs to be addressed at a state level as well. By the way, since I walk everywhere, I often do take a walk under there just to kind of see what's going on there. And when I was there a few days ago, I was chased by 3 nasty little dogs. There's leash laws all over the place, but it's kind of scary to walk down there and be chased by dogs. It's public property, and it should be safe and accessible to all. Let's see, but I chose to take that path. Let's see, but those are many complicated issues. My immediate concern is the lot between 7-Eleven and Rite Aid. The garbage that is there is unacceptable. The dumpsters are always full, and there are mountains of trash surrounding those dumpsters. I realize that the trash does not necessarily come from those stores. Maybe people dump stuff in them. Maybe put a fence around it. It's just really unacceptable, and all that trash ends up in our beautiful ocean. In Half Moon Bay, we are the last frontier before the garbage finds its way into the ocean, adding to the existing Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Some of you know what I'm talking about, these islands of garbage that are in the Pacific Ocean. And they also eventually turn into microplastics that end up in our bloodstreams and negatively affect our ecosystems along the way. I've been several times to City Hall and spoken to Joe, who tells me that this is a problem that is complicated because the lot belongs to some corporation in Texas and that the city is working on it. Apparently the city can't do anything because it's private property. Really? I find it crazy that nobody can be held accountable for the state of their property. Can't we have a city ordinance requiring a fine, like a hefty fine, the owners of that property? Can the city of Half Moon Bay clean it up and send the bill to Rite Aid? The right thing to do is just to simply clean it up. It really needs to be cleaned up, and the city should take that moral responsibility, regardless of cost. I've been doing research, and I talked with Joe. I was doing research to find the owner of Rite Aid, and it's not simple. It is not a franchise like McDonald's where you can blame one owner, quote unquote. But it's a corporation which is owned by shareholders who elect a board. And when I looked on it, there's a list of like 10 people who are on this board, and then there's shareholders. And so who do you address? And I've been kind of looking at the blogs of these individuals to see maybe somebody might be interested in what's happening to that Rite Aid, but they're all pharmacists.
Thank you, Ann. Can you wrap it up?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I just think that the dumpsters need to be locked up somewhere. It just needs to be cleaned up. And I think that was all. I'm wrapping it up.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you for listening.
This is an issue that I actually talked to a former city manager about a couple of years ago. We have had this issue with Rite Aid and 7-Eleven and the owners of those lots for many years. They did respond at one point, but I agree, it's really a mess. And I'm sure our city manager has heard this and he'll get on it.
Yeah, it's really, really important
Gotcha.
for our oceans and
Thank you.
our health. Thank you.
Next, we have Rocio Avila.
Sí, estoy. Okay.
Buenas noches, miembros del concilio y personas presentes. El día de hoy quiero compartir con ustedes la realidad que está pasando en estos momentos, miembros de nuestra comunidad. Esta semana he conversado con una mamá muy joven, madre soltera con un niño que tiene la misma edad que mi hija Perla. Se siente preocupada y me dijo que ella tiene 2 trabajos para poder alcanzar a pagar su renta y pagos que tiene que hacer. Trabaja en la mañana en un restaurante, 6 días a la semana, y en la tarde unas horas en un empaque de verduras en una granja. Ella compartía vivienda con su hermano, un lugar muy pequeño donde pagaban la cantidad de $1,500 por mes. Pero desgraciadamente, él se tuvo que ir de aquí porque era muy caro y no podía pagar. Ahora, este mes, el dueño del lugar le aumentó la cantidad de $300 más por mes. Ahora tendrá que pagar un total de $1,800. Para poder cubrir este aumento, está buscando otro trabajo en una de las bodegas que tiene su actual patrón, sumándole que tiene que pagar por el cuidado de su hijo mientras ella trabaja. Realmente es muy caro para una sola persona. No sé qué están pensando los dueños de las casas o los apartamentos que están aumentando mucho por estos lugares para vivir. Es por lo cual le pido que por favor se haga un control de renta. Esto ya es demasiado. También sabemos que lo que pasó durante el tiroteo se reveló las condiciones en las cuales hay algunas viviendas en mal estado en algunos ranchos. Y sabíamos que iban a tomar acción por parte de las autoridades para inspeccionar estos lugares. En estos lugares viven familias con hijos, familias que han vivido por muchos años aquí. Para ellos es ahora un problema más grande el pensar que si la vivienda en donde viven no pasa la inspección, lo sacarán. Lo sacarán del lugar. ¿Qué pasará con estas familias? ¿A dónde se irán? ¿A dónde se moverán? Si sabemos que no hay viviendas asequibles aquí donde ellas pudieran moverse a vivir. Esto es realmente preocupante en algunas personas que viven en estos lugares. ¿Qué será de ellos? Es por lo cual quise compartir estas historias que están pasando en nuestra comunidad latina aquí en Half Moon Bay y sus alrededores. Les pido que sean aprobados los proyectos de viviendas asequibles en esta comunidad y muchas gracias por darme la oportunidad de oírme hoy.
Good evening, members of the council and all people present. Today, I want to share with you the reality that's going on in these present moments with members of our community. This week, I had a conversation with a mom, very young mom, single mom with a son, with a kid, that is the same age as my daughter, Perla. She felt very worried, and she told me that she has 2 jobs just so that she has enough to pay the rent and other types of payments that she has to make. She works in the morning in a restaurant 6 days a week, and in the afternoons, a few hours, in this vegetable packing house in a farm. She used to share her living space with her brother, a very small place where they used to pay $1,500 a month. But unfortunately, he had to move from there because it was too expensive and he couldn't pay it anymore. Now, this month alone, the owner of that place has raised the rent $300 more per month. Now, she has to pay a total of $1,800. And in order to cover these expenses, she is now looking for another job on some kind of warehouse where her current boss has. In summary, she has to pay for childcare while she goes to work, and really, this is very expensive for just one person. I don't know what's going on with the owners of these houses or apartments, etc., that are constantly raising their rent for people to live in. And that's why I'm asking, please, let's have some rent control, because this is just too much. We also know that during the shootings, everything was revealed as far as the conditions in which people were living in substandard conditions on the farms. And we know that the authorities would take action to inspect these places now, where the families live with their kids and have actually lived there for so long. For them, it is now a problem, even a bigger problem, because if the inspections don't pass, they're going to be kicked out. So what's going to happen to these families? Where will they go? Where are they going to move to? We know that there's no place to go. There's no accessible or affordable housing where they can move to. This is really concerning. There's some people that live in these places. What's going to happen to them? This is why I wanted to share these stories with you of things that are happening within our community and in Half Moon Bay and its surroundings. So I ask you that we have these projects approved for housing, for affordable housing in our community. And so thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and listening to me today.
Thank you, Rocio. Next, we have Mark Masser. I don't know. Massara.
Madam Chair, honorable members of the council, I'm Mark Massara and I'm a resident of Miramar. I'm here tonight to speak to you very briefly about your story polls policy. As background, I represent a property in Miramar known as 2800 Champs-Élysées, and we've been working with your planning department now for over 7 years for a single family home in the approved Stolosky subdivision. We are headed now back for our 5th Planning Commission hearing. And the good news is, you can advance the slide if possible. The good news is that over these many years, we have erected and re-erected story poles numerous times pursuant to your policies in order to provide visuals of what the home would look like. And this has caused stress in the community because they are repeatedly wind and storm damaged and have to be re-erected. It's cost tens of thousands of dollars. We have memorialized the poles both with extensive photography, next slide please, as well as surveying, and we even have the certification from the story pole survey, having the story poles certified. Next slide please. There's the certification. The good news is that there are no longer objections to the footprint, the facade, the size of the home. It's much decreased. It's not nearly as big as the recent home approved from that subdivision. And the footprint. The remaining concerns are related to off-site drainage and stormwater issues related to the Pullman ditch, of which we do not own or control, but we're working with your staff on advanced stormwater technologies. And so what I did here recently was I took, next slide, drone footage of the story poles. And so now we have thoroughly memorialized what the home is going to look like if and when we win approval from the Planning Commission, and do not wish to continue to re-erect story poles over and over and over again as this process goes on for what may well be a decade. And I'm only raising this issue to say that I'm working with your staff not to have to re-erect the story poles in the future. Next slide, please. And what we're hoping that this most recent drone footage will suffice to give everybody a good indication. My goal, my objective is in the next couple of weeks to have the story poles removed. So by all means, if anybody would like to visit the site or reach out to me and discuss the story poles, please do that. Next slide, please. And then I think I've got one more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We now have Carolina Carbajal.
Okay. Muy buenas noches a todos.
Good evening, everyone.
Gracias siempre por su atención.
And as always, thank you for your attention.
Como ustedes saben, la preocupación de la comunidad en este momento es muy grande,
So as you well know, the concerns of this community are large,
sobre todo el control de la renta.
and above all, rent control.
Quisiera comentarles que esta semana tuvimos una reunión con el supervisor Mueller,
So I want to tell you that this week, we had a meeting with Supervisor Mueller,
donde el condado vino a hablar acerca de las necesidades en la ciudad de la costa,
where the county came in to talk about the needs here on the coast.
sobre la salud mental, y pude ver a muchos allí.
Over mental health, and many of you were there,
Vi al señor Herbie.
and Mr. Harvey.
Y algo que me llamó la atención en esa reunión fue que hablaron mucho acerca de los problemas que se están viendo realmente en la comunidad.
And something that really caught my attention was everything that they were talking about, the problems here in the community.
Pero puedo decirles que todos esos problemas que estamos sufriendo en la comunidad actualmente son causa de un solo problema que plantearon ahí.
But really, the cause of all of these problems that we're having in the community is just one thing that they were talking about there.
Les puedo mencionar que hablaban acerca de la salud mental,
So I can tell you that they were talking about mental health,
sobre la necesidad de lugares como guarderías o asistencia para la comunidad,
so also like daycare centers or some kind of help for the community,
la necesidad de más viviendas
more housing,
y sobre la necesidad que hay también para la producción de empleos también o generar como proyectos para que se den más beneficios a la comunidad.
also the need to further generate more employment,
Como salud, como los proyectos de salud.
like clinics, like.
Pero yo les quisiera comentar que a veces todos esos problemas que nosotros vemos los venimos acarreando porque tenemos una gran necesidad en nuestros hogares.
But really, sometimes all of the problems that we carry with us is because we have this huge problem in our homes.
Si una persona tuviera un hogar que pudiera pagar, no tuviera que tener tantos trabajos.
If a person had a place to live where he or she can pay, he wouldn't have to work so many jobs.
No descuidara tanto a sus hijos.
Would be able to take care of his kids.
Tal vez ellos cuando crecieran no tuvieran esa necesidad de generar violencia en la comunidad.
Maybe their kids growing up wouldn't have the need to generate all of this violence in their own community.
A veces esa violencia es producto de la falta de atención de sus padres.
Sometimes this violence is a side or a byproduct of the lack of attention from their parents.
Si nosotros pudiéramos tener una vivienda accesible, no tuviéramos que optar por programas para la salud.
If we can have programs that are affordable housing, we wouldn't have to go to these mental health.
Pues tuviéramos dinero para pagar nuestro hogar y dinero para poder pagar un bienestar de salud para nuestra familia.
We'd have the money not only to pay for our homes, but also our health.
Si nosotros pudiéramos interactuar más con nuestras familias y las descuidáramos menos por tener que trabajar tanto,
So if we had more time to interact with our families and not have to go to work because we have to pay for stuff,
disminuiríamos también mucho más la atención a la salud mental de nuestros hijos.
we would lower all of that tension from mental health from our kids.
No les estoy diciendo que la vivienda sería la solución completa a todas las demás necesidades que posee nuestra ciudad.
Now, I'm not saying that housing would be a fix-all solution for everything else in our community.
Pero les estoy diciendo que una vivienda adecuada con un precio accesible disminuiría un poco la carga a la ciudad y al condado también.
So, but what I am saying is with like a just price, it would actually bring down the load, not only for the city, but for the county as well.
Y eso sería un beneficio para nosotros como comunidad y para ustedes como la ciudad.
It would not just be a benefit for us, but it would also be a benefit for you as well.
La ciudad está pidiendo a gritos en este momento un control de la renta, y no solo los latinos, también las personas americanas.
The city is crying out for a rent control, and it's not just Latinos, but it's also American people.
¿Cuántas casas hay en venta en este momento? Desde Moss Beach hasta Half Moon Bay.
How many houses are up for sale, starting from Moss Beach all the way down to Half Moon Bay?
Yo limpio casas y yo puedo decir que por cada cuadra hay de 2 a 3 casas en venta.
So I clean houses, and I can really say that for each block, there's about 1 or 2 houses for sale.
Nuestra comunidad se está yendo porque es algo muy difícil de pagar.
Our community is leaving because it's really difficult to pay for all of this.
Y si les dijera cuánta comunidad latina se está mudando porque ya no puede pagar,
And if I was to let you know how many Latino families are leaving because they can't pay anymore,
en este mes llevo contado ya 5 familias que se marcharon ya de Half Moon Bay porque no pueden pagar.
in this month, I can say that 5 families have already left because they can't afford it anymore.
Nos convertiremos en un pueblo fantasma dentro de pronto.
This town will start looking like a ghost town in no time.
Solo quería generarles ese análisis para que vean la necesidad tan importante que tenemos en este momento sobre el control de la renta.
I just wanted to generate this analysis so you all can see the importance of rent control, that we need it now.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina. And now we have some members online.
Yes, Shauna Pickett Gordon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Last 33 years, and this is a beautiful place to live. And at the same time, there are terrible inequities. And this is about housing. Good news, State Bill 567, the Homelessness Prevention Act, which will enact many protections for tenants across California, is now being supported by all senators and assembly members in San Francisco and San Mateo counties. So progress is being made. So news, the Tenant Protection Ordinance drafted by San Mateo County Supervisors Corso and Slocum, which would give the current law, AB 1482, and other tenant-related laws, enforcement provisions, and which would extend those protections to tenants in unincorporated areas of our county, still doesn't have the needed support to pass. At the supervisors' meeting last month, many apartment owners came up and spoke against the proposed ordinance. A few of those owners voiced support for governments to build new affordable housing, but none wanted any more enforcement of the laws protecting tenants. Continuing bad news, tenants who are working full-time or more at the minimum wage, and most of our essential workers, are forced to pay up to 70% of their pre-tax income on rent. This is inhumane. This is an unsustainable situation. The wages are not going up. The more than 1,000 family units suffering from impossible rent levels cannot possibly wait 2, 5, or more years for affordable housing to be built. And I want to say, we are so happy about the affordable housing that is being very strongly supported by the City Council and also by other government entities, but things can't be built overnight to serve the needs of those who are waiting. So if rent control is not enacted, we fear that many areas are going to lose their essential workers. Carolina just spoke to this, and it's not hearsay. There are far more than just 5 families leaving. For the coast side, this means that farms won't have enough workers to produce the food that we expect to find in our beautiful markets. The farmers will begin suffering. Everybody will begin suffering. That's only one tiny example, and it's not tiny when we think of all the jobs that pay minimum wages from restaurants onward. It's a really dire prospect. So please, please consider rent controls for those on whom we depend to make our lives comfortable and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna. That concludes public forum. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone on council wish to pull anything?
I want to have a very brief discussion about item 1E. I don't want to pull it, I just want to comment.
Okay, can I have a motion for the other items on the consent calendar?
Yes, I move that we adopt the consent calendar, including items 1A, waive reading of resolutions and ordinances, item 1B, receipt of legislative position letters, item 1C, warrants for the month of July 2023, item 1D, Treasurer's report for the quarter ending June 30th, 2023, item 1F, citizens option for public safety grant programs for FY 2023 through 24, item 1G, professional services agreement with Wood Consulting Services. Item 1H, city's response to the June 12th, 2023 grand jury report titled Accessory Dwelling Units, Affordable Housing's Panacea or Prevarication.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now we can discuss item 1E.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. Item 1E is a temporary solution to the problem of the Seymour Ditch outfall. And if you've seen it, it's just totally amazing the amount of erosion that's gone on there. And we've been dealing with this issue for over a decade now. And it's emblematic of the whole problem that exists on not just Half Moon Bay, but the entire coast side. And that's the issue of stormwater, drainage, flooding, whatever you want to call it. And I just want to quote from the staff report so that we know we're on the same page. This is what the vendor that we're about to approve the temporary solution. It is also recommended that the city engage with local, state, and federal partners to identify a permanent solution for the broader drainage, erosion, and infrastructure issues in the area. And I really think that's important, that we start to think more globally, more generally, more systematically about our stormwater issues. So I just want to bring that up. I'm okay with the temporary solution that's been proposed with this vendor, but in the future, we really need to consider how we're going to deal with stormwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rohrbach. Councilmember Ruddock.
Yeah, I totally agree with Harvey, the point of, we need a watershed approach and work with our partners. I have been part of a group of agency stakeholders actually looking to develop an upper watershed project for the Seymour Channel that would involve, some restoration work on the Wavecrest properties, dealing with the stormwater as it actually comes in, rather than waiting for it to, do end-of-pipe damage. And part of the problem lies with the county, because there's an outfall from the dump that goes into the channel, and that certainly is contributing to it. We haven't been very successful at getting funding to date, but there is a strong partner commitment. And there is going to be an application to NOAA for their Coastal Resilience Grant to fund some initial planning work to deal with the upper watershed problem of the Seymour Channel. So it's not for lack of attention. Staff's been attending these meetings, Maz and John, and Representatives Post and Coastside Land Trust. So it's just one of those things where people are working together, and we've just not been able to corner the money yet. But, we have some very powerful people, money magnets, working on the issue, and hopefully, we'll get a break in the next year. So I just wanted to reassure you about that. But I agree with you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion, please?
Yes, I move that we adopt item 1E, professional service agreement with Nichols Consulting Engineers for emergency repairs of the Seymour ditch outfall.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. We move on to ordinances and public hearings, and there are none. We're now moving on to item 3A, the annual report on law enforcement services and activities.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have the Assistant Sheriff, Ryan Moynihan, and our Captain, Rebecca Albin, here. Unfortunately, the Sheriff did have to leave, so we'll be getting the report from them, but I know that they'll represent the department well. We'd like to invite them up to the front table, if they would, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, esteemed members of council, and city manager and city staff. It's my pleasure to be here tonight on behalf of Sheriff Christina Corpus, our executive team, and the men and women of the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. And my goal tonight is to kind of give you just a little bit about what my role is and kind of our overarching goals, so to speak, for all of our policing bureaus, and Half Moon Bay being one. So I am the Assistant Sheriff over operations. So within my command is all of our patrol bureaus, which includes Half Moon Bay. In addition to that, our Millbrae and North County Bureau, our San Carlos Bureau, and our we have what we call our headquarters bureau, which also includes the North Fair Oaks community in Redwood City, as well as the towns of both Woodside and Portola Valley. And then in addition to that, we have our transit bureau, which is kind of unique and provides police services on Caltrain and the Samtrans buses. So within that command, obviously one of my areas of oversight is here in beautiful Half Moon Bay. And I will tell you, not to be biased, Half Moon Bay is a very special place, and I can say that from many years of experience visiting this town, living close by, having relatives living in the area. So I might be a little bit biased, but this is truly a beautiful place and has so many things to offer. So again, what I'd like to do is just kind of paint for you this picture of our overall goals for all of our bureaus. And it's really important to the sheriff and our team that we provide the same level of care and attention to all of our policing bureaus. You know, equitability is very important to us. And in order to do that, we have to frame how we do the work that we do to match those communities. Because what we realize is that each one of our communities have unique needs. The Half Moon Bay community's needs sometimes, although similar, are very different than San Carlos and some of our other policing bureaus. And so, again, in order to provide that equitable service, we try to gear our service to the needs of the community. You're very fortunate to have Captain Albin here as your chief. She's extremely engaged and really thinks outside the box and owns this community as if it was her own. And so we're very fortunate to have her leadership out here. Overarching goals for us and all of our bureaus is we have this new slogan in the sheriff's office, and it's important to mention because I think it ties in really well with a lot of the things that Captain Albin will be talking about tonight in her report, and it also ties in really well with our goals, the sheriff's goals, and our team's goals for the entire county that we serve. And that saying is people first and service above self. And so what we mean by that is we're always looking at the needs of those people that we serve in the communities, those unique communities that we serve. And for those of us in leadership, it also includes the people that go out and serve, those that work for us. And the other part to that slogan is service above self. And that's really simple. Sometimes you have to put your own personal interests aside and beliefs to make sure that the service we're providing matches the needs of the community members we serve. And again, very diverse communities. You know, as we know, we understand that the beauty of Half Moon Bay is Half Moon Bay's diversity. This also ties in really well to one of our areas of focus, and we really preach this and we talk about it when we have our weekly meetings. So we meet as a group weekly. I meet with all the captains and all the patrol bureaus, and we talk about what's going on in their bureaus. And we make sure that everybody's aligned with this one saying that kind of that ties into that slogan I just told you about, and that's beyond the call for service. And this is something that the sheriff has really pushed since she's taken office. And what we mean by that is we don't look at a call for service as simply just a call for service. We look at it to try to find the deeper root cause of what may have caused that call, what may have caused that call for service, because we realize that sometimes crimes and quality of life issues are symptoms of a greater problem. And so the goal is for every single call for service, we want to look deeper so that we're trying to find long-term solutions to problems, because that's where the bang for the buck is for our community members. And when we do that, we look at it through the lens, number one, of safety, right? That's the most important thing we do, is we keep people safe and we provide safety. And one of the examples that comes to mind, and again, Captain Albin will go into more detail in this report, is, you know, we had an instance out here in the coast where we had a drowning. And again, Captain Albin will talk a little bit about how we responded to that, but we looked at that call, not just, it was two separate drownings actually of some of our farm workers that work so hard out in this community. And we looked at that as, there's a deeper issue here. And what resources do we have available to us that we can leverage to help provide services? And we're fortunate because we have the Sheriff's Activities League, and I can tell you that's here to stay. We're expanding that. Captain Albin will talk a little bit more about some of our plans for that, but you're going to see a lot more of SAL out here on the coast, because that's a commitment of the sheriff and our executive team and our office as a whole. But we also look at it, in addition to safety, right, we look at quality of life issues. And that really speaks to the uniqueness of each bureau, because we understand that some of the things that concern the community members in Half Moon Bay are very unique to Half Moon Bay. And again, Captain Albin will talk about some of these things, because those are opportunities for us to problem solve. And these are generally low-level crimes, ordinance violations. They're not your felony type crimes or those major crimes. They're those things that, if left unchecked and not dealt with, they proliferate, they get worse. And so we try to do what we can within the confines of the law, right, to address those in an effective way, in a fair and effective way. And then the last lens that we look at when we really kind of judge this beyond the call is we look at the community engagement. Is there an opportunity for us to engage the community better, to address some of these issues. And so some of the things you may have noticed, especially with Captain Albin, is a lot more engagement. We have coffee with the chief. We're at community events because we need to be part of the fabric of this community. And so you need to see us out there. People need to develop that relationship. And I can say that Captain Alvin is probably one of the folks that really has spearheaded a lot of these things, where she's out there constantly meeting with community members. But she's also leveraging technology, because we also know, as many people have alluded to tonight, many people are busy in this community. They're working, both family members are working. And so oftentimes they're engaging not in person, in coming to meetings in person, right? They're leveraging technology. And so we're using things like Nextdoor and other social media outlets to get the message out to our community members in a timely manner, because we know that when we get the information out, it's generally more accurate and it's timely. And so that's part of our overall commitment, again, to engaging this community and leveraging all the resources that the sheriff has to offer. So it's not just Half Moon Bay and your Half Moon Bay Bureau, right? You're supported by the depth of what the sheriff office has to offer. And so that's really kind of probably the second branch to our just overarching goals. And then again, if you know the sheriff, one of those goals that has been just, front and center for us is transparency. And what do we mean by that? It's we owe the community, they need to know what we do and how we do it. That's really important, right? Because we know that safety in communities is a partnership. And if we don't have that partnership, we're never going to be successful at the job that we do. And so that transparency helps to build legitimacy, trust in us and what we do. And so some of the things that we've done along those lines, again, are some of the community engagement things that Captain Albin's been engaging in, the monitoring of Nextdoor and posting things, our transparency page, our care. We also have our CARES model that's out here that helps with some of our homeless or some of our unhoused population, really, again, to address all the different needs of these different populations in the community. And then we have our groups that the sheriff meets with on a regular basis to get community engagement. So we're really reaching out to the community, and we have 3 different groups that the sheriff meets with on a regular basis, and it's representative of the community. We have one out here on the coast side. As a matter of fact, they had a meeting last night. And those groups are really an opportunity for community members to talk directly to the sheriff and members of her executive team, including Chief Alvin when she's available for those meetings, to talk about what's on their mind and what the issues are in their neck of the woods, those things that are unique to them. And so that also, again, allows for us to engage in dialogue and share that transparency about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so with all of that said, that's, again, the general overall picture of what we do, but I want you to know that I'm here available to you in addition to Captain Alvin. You're in very good hands with her, but this community is important to us. It's important to the sheriff, very much so, and we'll continue to have a presence out here and show you how important this community is to us by being out and engaged in these type of meetings. And so it's my pleasure to turn it over to Captain Alvin, who will give you the report.
Thank you for coming. We're done. Now you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, there it is. So much for my technology. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rebecca Albin. I'm the captain here on the coast, all of the unincorporated coast, as well as lovely Half Moon Bay. My office is footsteps away, so I am your chief here. Let's see if do I need to use the clicker, or can I just use that works. All right, I will do my best. There's going to be some redundancy because my boss is very eloquent, but I will try to rein it in as we go. Next time I'm going to have him go after me because that's a hard act to follow. So I wanted to give everybody kind of a picture of our administration. I know it's very confusing. Even for police officers versus sheriff's office, people get very confused. Everybody on this page was here earlier. If you got a chance to meet them, they're all very nice. We have Sheriff Christina Corpus, who you all voted for. She's all of our boss. And then just under her, we have the Under Sheriff, Chris Shung, who was formerly the police chief in Mountain View. And then he decided to come over here and become part of the sheriff's office. And then under him is my direct boss, Assistant Sheriff Monahan, who came to us sort of via the North Bay, but we like to think of him as San Mateo PD because it's much closer to home. And then you have me. So day to day, I'm the boss of all things here in Half Moon Bay, but then I also run things through my chain of command as well as my city chain of command. So I have lots and lots of bosses, lots of oversight with us. This is our patrol structure. If anybody's curious what that looks like, I thought it would be good to explain that to you. We have 4 teams, so no matter what day it is, weekend, holiday, night, day, whatever, people are always working. We have 2 dedicated units that work here in the city of Half Moon Bay always. We have 2 units that work the North County, and then we have 2 units that work the South County, and we cover the whole coast. We have obviously Pacifica to the far north, and then our friends in Santa Cruz on the far end on the other side. So our schedules are a little odd for people. Even for us, they get confusing. Our day shifts basically work every other weekend. So you'll work Monday, Tuesday, you're off Wednesday, Thursday, and then you work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the next week you switch. So everybody gets a weekend off every 2 weeks. And then our nights are just 4 on, 4 off, and it's nice to have 4 days off, but it's never fun to work 4 days in a row. We also have a Skyline unit. It's the 90 beat that I started recently. We were getting a lot of complaints regarding reckless driving, speeding up on Skyline. So the 90 beat is our canine car, and it works noon to midnight every day of the week. They're listed under a night shift schedule because we had to put them on somebody's schedule. And so it kind of works out because then each canine gets to work with both day shifts. So the reason I share all this with you, because you're probably wondering why I'm telling you who works the parts of the coast that are not here, is because this is the full complement of resources that we have here on the coast. You know, there's always this thought of like, we're stuck here on the coast, or if something really bad happens, who's going to be able to help us? This is everybody that we have here. So when something really bad happens, like God forbid the shooting that we had earlier in the year, it wasn't just the 2 deputies that you had working here in Half Moon Bay. It was, in that instance, everybody on the coast and everybody on the bay side, and anybody that had a radio that could come help. And I personally started with the Millbrae Police Department, and so I know what it's like to work for a small city jurisdiction, similar to Half Moon Bay, because we used to share a radio before the sheriff's office absorbed both of them, and not to have resources when you need them, or to always have to call for other agencies to come help you. I mean, it's a good feeling when they come help, but, it's no fun to have to ask. With the sheriff's office, like I said, you have all these units that are along the coast if you need them, and then we have, the entire office on the bay side that's, bearing in mind they can get through 92 or Devil's Slide, they're just as far away as it takes for them to get here in a car. So it's really nice, like I said, whether it's something horrible like happened earlier in the year, or something that just needs resources, it isn't quite that bad, to know that we have all the help that we need within our own office. I think this slide pretty much speaks for itself. I wanted to include something about diversity. For anybody that's online, you can probably still see I'm a female. We have, I think, a decent amount of diversity in our small coastal bureau here. And I just wanted to include some of the, traits or aspects of what makes us who we are. So, we have age ranges from early 20s to mid 50s. Our education ranges from some high school to a master's degree. I know I got mine a couple years ago, which was something I never thought I would do, and I'm really glad I did it before I had kids, because it was a lot of work. We have veterans that represent the Navy, Army, and Coast Guard. There's 4 of us women that work here in the Bureau, ranging from our records clerk, is that it? Records clerk, to female deputies, to myself. My goal is to actually get a female on each of my 4 shifts. I haven't done it yet, but I'm hoping maybe I'll set a goal. By this time next year, I'll be able to tell you we have a woman on every team. As terms of languages spoken, we have English, Spanish, Croatian. Did not see that one coming, I'm guessing. Tagalog, Mandarin, and Tongan. And ironically, the one that speaks Croatian also speaks Spanish. So we got 2 for 1 with him. Our cultural heritages are pretty much all over the map. Because, I don't have to tell all of you, the goal is for us to represent the community that we serve. And especially being the coast, people come from all over. So I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not someone that's going to come to visit, that I don't have someone that speaks that language or is from that country that they're from. But we do the best that we can. And, we do have a plethora of resources when and if we have somebody that we need to communicate with, that we don't have somebody that speaks that language. Either we can find somebody, whether from the sheriff's office or from our allied agencies, that does speak that language. And almost always you can find somebody that speaks everything. Or we do have language lines. So, we're never going to let communication be a barrier to being able to help somebody when they need help, which is something I feel really good about. Okay. NIBRs. This slide is, I hope I tried to simplify something that's extremely confusing. So if it doesn't work, I'm sure at the end you guys can ask me and I'll do my best to answer it. We used to have something called UCR, which stood for Uniform Crime Reporting. It was how we tracked all of our statistics, and my predecessors, though I think it's been maybe 2 or 3 years since we did this, that was how they got their statistics. We now have something called NIBRs and CYBRs, because we here in law enforcement really like our weird acronyms. That stands for National or California Incident-Based Reporting System. The idea is that you'll find consistency across the state and across the country amongst your reporting, which makes it easier for studies to be done unilaterally, comparing things. In theory, that makes sense. It was also designed specifically to record newer crimes, like maybe ID theft, things that maybe 30 years ago was not as prolific as it is now. So there's more of an expanse of crimes that it covers. The old recording system, I've been told, because again, I'm not an expert on this, covered 8 major groups, and this one covers 22. So you get a lot more detail with this. It only started recently, and so we're going to look at some charts in the next couple slides that talk about crimes and arrests and so forth. And you may notice, like I did, that there's really nothing to compare them to. And if that bothers you, I share your pain because it bothers me. But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. I even spoke to the analysts and said, well, can I just get the stats from like 3 years ago, the last time that we did this, and compare it to that? 2 problems with that. One was we had COVID at that time, and the world was not normal during that time. And the second one is, as it was explained to me, it's sort of like comparing apples to oranges. They're both fruit, but they're not the same. And so it wouldn't really paint a fair picture if I were to do that. So I'm just going to basically say it is what it is. It's not perfect. But this time next year, we'll be able to very clearly compare to this year, and then moving forward, this should never be a problem again, unless the federal government decides to change it again, but hopefully that won't happen. Yep. Okay. We're getting into the slides of graphs. There's not that many, I promise. Violent crimes. So, looking at these charts, you can definitely see some spikes. On the left for violent crime, we see some spikes with aggravated assaults. I tried to get ahead of your questions, so we'll see how successful I am. I checked with the analysts regarding the aggravated assault numbers. They shared with me, to break it down so you have some context, that 5 of them were domestic violence related, 4 were gang related, 5 involved juveniles, and 1 was, of course, the incident at the beginning of the year. Something important when you're looking at these, if you're looking at, for example, January, and you think, well, why is there not a huge spike in homicides? Because a lot of people lost their lives in January. You have to remember that this is crime incident reporting. And so we had 2 crime scenes, and so it's reflected as 2. It's not the number of people, it's the number of incidents. So for context, that's something. Again, this is a new way of doing things, so I think that it's probably going to grow and they're going to learn and change things. Something that I learned is in aggravated assaults, I thought maybe somebody would ask me what aggravated assaults included, and I see a nodded head, so I got one right. I had them send it to me. I thought it was going to be like 5 crimes. It's 212, which I printed out if anybody wants to see what they are. And so that also contextualizes why we see the spikes. Because when you have 212 crimes, again, I hope that they kind of work with this and fix it, because I don't think it gives a true representation. That's 212 crimes that are, a lot of them, very different. So you're not seeing a spike or a trend when you're comparing, so many different things. And along those lines, there are several penal codes for domestic violence that are included in aggravated assaults, and yet domestic violence is its own category. So then it makes you think that maybe some things are being double reported. So again, this is not ideal. It's the reason why I think a lot of records people in the last year probably wanted early retirement, because it's just new, and we're all dealing with it. So it is not ideal, but we're all in the same boat here. Also, let's see, below is a breakdown for December, May, and June, because I believe that there were some spikes there as well. So they're all kind of broken up the same, different quantities of domestic violence, gang activities, generally involving juveniles, and then other, which could be 210 other crimes. So again, I would say don't be alarmed by, what looks to be a spike, because I'm not an analyst, but I don't think it is what it looks like it is. And it certainly hasn't been my experience working here. Yep. Okay, property crimes. I'll just say on a personal note that, people talk about property crimes, they're not the bad ones, because nobody's dying, nobody's being assaulted. But I think arguably, when you're the victim of a property crime, it feels almost as bad. I mean, even something as simple as having your car broken into can feel like such an invasion. Not to make this about me, but when I was a teenager, I left my wallet in my car. Stupid teenager. Just very visible. And in the morning, my window was broken and my wallet was gone. And it really freaked me out. Granted, I was a teenager at the time, and I deserve what I got because I shouldn't have left it out. Don't ever leave your wallet in your car. It's a bad idea. But it felt like an invasion. That was somebody had been in my car and had all my personal information, and it didn't feel good. So this is just, I'm going off topic to say that I think property crimes in some ways are equally a big deal to people when you're the victim of them. Again, looking at the spikes, we see spikes in vandalism. Something that, we need to remember is that graffiti is part of vandalism, and we all know, anybody that's been around here, that we've had some graffiti incidents, in those months there. And so, again, I checked with the analysts, and they said 25 of those are graffiti. 15 occurred between March and June, which is consistent with where the spikes are. And of the 64 vandalism reports, 26 were listed as being gang-related. So this is all to say that, in this instance, I think maybe what we're seeing is kind of consistent with what the graphs say. And if you wonder about the 0 for the auto burglary arrests, I think anecdotally, not to say that we never catch auto burglars, but it can sometimes be harder because, you may have late reporting. Maybe somebody was on vacation for 2 weeks and then they came back and they call us and they said, well, my car was broken into sometime in the last 2 weeks. Or, if your neighbors happen to have cameras, that can be really good evidence, but not everybody does. And there's oftentimes no witnesses because sometimes these things happen in the middle of the night when everybody's sleeping. So don't be deterred that it's a 0 for auto burglary arrests. We do arrest them. It just seems like we don't have a lot of that right now. So that'll be another goal for next year. Oh, one other thing I wanted to explain. I won't keep us here all night, I promise. But oftentimes when people are talking to me, they talk about being the victim of a burglary or a victim of a robbery. And I feel like people use those kind of interchangeably. And they're basically the same. The only difference is the element of force or fear. So, if somebody steals my watch, from my car, that would be a burglary. If somebody comes up to me and says, I'm going to kill you, give me your watch, that would be a robbery. So again, it's the same thing. It's just basically if you have fear for your life or if something was just taken. So there won't be a quiz afterwards, but maybe next time you hear somebody saying that in your head, you'll be like, you're using that incorrectly. I'll have changed your life. Traffic stats. Somebody was talking about traffic. I read your mind. These are our traffic stats. I will start with DUI, relatively consistent, for the 4 quarters. I always say that DUI is kind of the crime that applies to everybody. It doesn't care, what you make, what level of education you have, what country you were born in. It just takes one bad decision of drinking a little bit too much and getting in a car. Again, it doesn't surprise me that it looks relatively consistent because there's always going to be people making bad decisions where alcohol is concerned, and we're here to take them to jail if they need to go there, hopefully before they do something terrible and hurt somebody. For traffic citations, again, I'm pointing to you just to say I feel you, is that we do give a decent amount of citations, I personally think, on all my teams. And hopefully everybody thinks of citations not as us picking on people, but as one of the proactive measures that my boss mentioned earlier. Oftentimes people that are speeding or driving recklessly, they're not just doing it one time, they're probably doing it a lot of times. And if one of my deputies giving somebody a ticket for making a right turn on red without their blinker on, or driving, excessively in terms of speed, maybe it'll make that person change their driving behaviors. And it may not happen every time, but even if it happens a little bit of the time, we're making the community safer. Not to mention, I can't speak for everybody here, but I suspect you all feel me that if you're driving and somebody says, that's an area that the police are, that's an area where the sheriff's office is doing, speed traps, or I got a ticket there last week, you're probably going to slow down. You're probably going to drive really well. And again, that's a way that we're making the community safer. If people hear that, we're ticketing on Main Street, they're going to drive really well on Main Street, especially if it's somebody that they know for sure personally got a ticket. So I feel good about those. And then, we look at the traffic collision stats. For the fatal collisions, again, 0, 1, 1, and 0 for the quarters. I'm not going to make light of the 1. Even 1 loss of life is definitely too many. But, especially being here in Half Moon Bay, we're sandwiched by the rest of the coast. And I don't have to tell everybody here that CHP stats for fatals, if you looked at the entire coast, would not be 0 and 1. So I think that we are very fortunate. And I hope that it will always be all zeros or 0 and 1. Because that's horrible. So I don't want to say I'm glad, but I'm relatively okay with those stats. Oh, last one for my boss. Did you work traffic previously? He told me about the 3 E's, which I personally was not familiar with, but it made me think he probably worked traffic. The 3 E's are enforcement, education, and engineering, and this is apparently how we combat traffic issues through enforcement, which we're doing, education, which I did a little bit of, but we do a lot more of day to day, and then engineering, which that unfortunately is on you guys. But the engineering aspect is the stop signs and the speed bumps and so forth. So together, those keep people safe on the road. Thank you for that. Okay, the PERT team. PERT, I told you about the acronyms, is the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. That is it is kind of our in-house version of the CARES team, which will be my next slide. So I'm not going to paraphrase. I'm going to read it off here because it doesn't need paraphrasing. The Psychiatric Emergency Response Team is a partnership between the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office and the San Mateo County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. PERT's goal is to provide resources and support to individuals and families living with mental illness to help manage acute crisis, reduce violent interactions, and tragic outcomes involving law enforcement and those experiencing crisis, among others. And then the PERT team also reviews all mental health cases that the Sheriff's Office is involved in. We always had CIT. I went to CIT training many, many years ago as a deputy and as a police officer. And then as of 2021, we started ECIT, which it is an enhanced approach to the toolbox that we were already given. As deputies, I don't know now because I went to the police academy like 20 years ago almost, but generally speaking, you know, there's not the same attention paid to teaching us about the mentally ill or those in crisis, having emotional crisis, as there is about everything else in the police academy, which is normal because there's a lot to doing our job. ECIT gives us some of those tools that we didn't get maybe at the earlier part of our career. The younger, newer deputies, they've always known this, but for a lot of us that started before we had really identified that this was a piece that was missing, it was in-service training, meaning as we are already doing this job, we're then getting that training. And I do think that we're better for it. I think that culturally, not even just law enforcement, I think the world realizes that people suffering from mental illness, you know, it's the same as a physical ailment. It's not something to be, you know, written off, and it's something that needs to be handled appropriately and correctly. And that's why we have the PERT team, whose entire existence is just to help all of us out here in the bureaus make sure that we do right and do the best that we can by our mentally, I don't want to say mentally ill, but people suffering with mental illness. And again, they review all the cases for the whole sheriff's office so that they can follow up and say, hey, you know what, we have this resource that you didn't know about that we want to apply to this person. And so, you know, we are so lucky to have them. I know I consult with them all the time, as do all my patrol teams. Looking at the stats, we do see a little bit of a spike in terms of the demographics of the people that the PERT team comes in contact with, the spikes being Half Moon Bay residents. And I think that we should look at that and say, you know what, again, this is the coast. It's a popular vacation place. It's a popular come on the weekend place. But who lives here all the time? And most likely is going to be the one that if you're having a crisis or you need help, going to be the ones to reach out to the PERT team. It makes sense to me that the people that live here would be the people that use the service the most. And I don't want to speak for all of you, but I think that's a good thing because we're here to help everybody on the coast, everybody in Half Moon Bay, but especially the people that call this home. So if people that live here need help, any kind of help, we're here to provide it. So that tells me that the people that call this place home know that we're here and they're accepting of the resources that we have to help them. So I think it's a good thing, personally. Oh, I apologize. I did want to mention one other thing. Does it go back? Did I break it? There it is. I did want to give one example. We have a Half Moon Bay resident, Lizette, who said I could use her name. I'm not outing her. And I met her a couple of months ago at Coffee with a Chief. Another resident that lived in Half Moon Bay who was friendly and welcoming and warm. And we've built more of a relationship since that time because a member of her family suffers from mental illness. And so we have dealt with her on this issue for such a prolonged time that in preparation for this, I asked her, I said, hey, would you be willing to have me share your story so that it's not just me saying what a great job we're doing or the resources that we have. You know, you can hear from somebody that's been on the receiving end of those services. So what she sent me is I would like to let the community know that I'm very impressed with the help that I've gotten with our local sheriffs and Captain Albin and Sheriff Christina Corpus on helping me with my family member who is on the spectrum, who recently I had to have 5150. 5150, for those that don't know, is a psych hold. It's a mental hold. He's afraid of law enforcement, and it was amazing how they came up with a plan to get him the psychiatric help he needed. Captain Albin and Sheriff Christina Corpus have been very helpful with helping me navigate the system to get the resources that I need for my son. I so appreciate their support and assistance. I'm so thankful for them. And I'm not including this so I can, tout, how great we are. It's not about us. It's about somebody who had a family member that was terrified of law enforcement. And we were able to, using the resources that we have, turn that around to the point that that family member is, not always, but a lot of the time, very excited when the deputies come. And so that I feel like it's an ongoing thing, but I think generally it's a win, and I definitely wanted to share that. Okay. The CARES team, I don't have to tell everybody here about the CARES team. I did just want to say, though I wasn't here at the time of its inception, when I started was, I think, when it was relatively new. Am I right on that timeline? And I have been the happy recipient of how amazing they are. So I want to thank all of you for giving them to me, even though they're not mine. But I feel like they are because we use them all the time. I personally have used them. When I was only here just a little bit, I was walking to lunch and somebody flagged me down and said that there was somebody that had entered into one of our local churches and was scaring people because he was hearing voices. And so the person was walked over to me, and it was like, here. And I called the CARES team, and I said, hey, could you come meet me outside this church? And they did, and they were fantastic. And they found the person's, I forget, sister, some family member, and they helped him, and it was all good. So I've literally used them. It's exactly what they're supposed to be used for. And I will say that they've never said no for anything. Even if there's somebody that needs help that's, a little bit past, their jurisdictional bounds, they're so, it's like the love of the game. It's not just a job for them. They really want to help people, and any time and any way that they can help people, they do. And I don't think I have to tell all of you this, but I think they're fantastic, and city manager knows I tell everybody that all the time. I'm one of their biggest fans. So the one thing I did want to mention is that they shared with me that they've had over 400 calls for service taken and responded to here in Half Moon Bay over the last fiscal year. And I did check, in case anybody's thinking what I thought, it's a different number than the PERT team. So all the stats for the PERT team are the PERT team, all the stats for the CARES team are the CARES team. So Half Moon Bay is getting like 2 full-time teams that are just invested in helping people cope with, whatever emotional issues or mental health issues they're struggling with. And I don't think there's a lot of cities, if any, that have that amount of resources. So my hat's off to all of you on that, and gratefully accepted. Thank you. Okay, Public Safety Communications, PSC. Earlier, I must not be getting enough sleep. I asked my boss, and I said, they're PSC, what does that stand for? And he said, well, it's on your slide. So it stands for Public Safety Communications. You all may know of it as dispatch. If you call 911, it's the people that answer the phone. So we have our average response times for emergency calls, low priority calls as well. Somebody's attacking me versus there's a dog running around the neighborhood without a leash. Calls for service, I won't say citizen initiated, community member initiated, versus calls for service that are deputy initiated. So to explain the difference between those two things, community member initiated would be like you call 911 and you say, help, I need the police. Help, I need the sheriff's office. That would be on that graph. Deputy initiated would be people are not using their turn signal at a particular intersection, I need enforcement. We go there and we start stopping cars. That would be deputy initiated, anything that we do proactively. That would be maybe I see somebody loitering in the neighborhood at certain times, or speeding, anything like that, that we do proactively. The number one goal for the sheriff's office at large, and obviously for our bureau and in this city, is to prevent crime. Along those same lines, I want to bring up Poplar Beach. I won't speak very long because I know it's polarizing and there's a lot of emotions. I actually share them because I spend a lot of time thinking about Poplar Beach. So Poplar Beach was something that, coming new to your community, I didn't know anything about. And I since know a lot about, not as much as the people that live near it, but as much as somebody that doesn't live there can know. Poplar Beach first came to my attention when I met Willa Chapman from the Seahorse Ranch. She came into my office, and I think that she thought that I was going to be a tough customer because she shared with me that she's often asked for help from my predecessors and has not felt like she's gotten any, and like dogs being off leash on a beach was not a big issue. But she was wrong, because she shared with me that she adjusted when her horses went on the beach because she and the people that work for her were so afraid that the dogs off leash were going to attack her horses and cause somebody to get hurt that they were trying to adjust when they put the horses out, specifically working around when the dogs may or may not be there. And I thought that was ridiculous. We have leash laws. You guys made them. It's enforcing the law. And, you know, we don't pick and choose what laws we enforce. And we certainly don't knowingly allow people to violate those laws. I personally, I've never owned a horse. I was a canine handler. I love dogs. But as I told Willa when I met her, as somebody that loves dogs, I have no tolerance for irresponsible dog owners. And if there's people that are watching this on the internet right now that are those dog owners that are going to hate me for saying this, I'm okay with that, because be irresponsible. Put your dog on a leash. It's not asking too much. We're adults. I mean, even kids, put your dog on a leash. One of the worst calls that I got, because we do patrols routinely now. What do you call the thing they go in? A Polaris. You can tell I'm not outdoorsy. A Polaris goes, we have it go on the beach with the deputies all the time now, and we consistently are giving warnings and sometimes citations to people that have their dogs running around out of control off leash. That would be something that would be captured under deputy initiated. It's something that the community brought to us that we're saying, well, we're gonna initiate some enforcement regarding this. I know it's getting late, so I'm not going to keep us here all night, but Willa was another one that shared with me some thoughts. She said, no exaggeration, the staff is abuzz about your work on the beach, all saying the same thing. First time in literally decades the sheriffs have been on the beach. You cannot change the past. You are not responsible for it either. The future, however, is suddenly looking much brighter. And I thought that was a pretty cool piece of feedback to receive. Not only just for this, but kind of as like a life mantra for us all to kind of consider. You know, we can't really do much about what was done before, but we certainly have the ability to change what we do moving forward. And that's sort of the rationale that I apply to everything that I do here, is not to dwell on the past, but just let's make the future better. So, you know, that meant a lot. That meant a lot when I got that. Last thing I was going to say was in regard to why I take this issue so seriously is that I did get some feedback recently that there was a group of Girl Scouts that were on one of the horse tours on the beach, and one of the dog owners had his dog off leash and was literally antagonizing the horses and the people in this group. And I had to think, like, what kind of person does that? And I don't have to tell this group, because I know at least one of you has been on the receiving end of being on the horse and having the dogs scare the horse. And it's like, you know, both as a member of law enforcement and as somebody that has young kids, I just can't imagine, no matter what your beef is, putting kids in that situation. So we will continue to do our enforcement on Poplar Beach, both during the day and the night, because I know at night there's a whole bunch of other issues to do with drinking and fireworks and bonfires, and we're well aware of those as well. So please do continue to keep calling us. We'll move on with the the presentation, but I didn't feel like we could have an annual report without acknowledging Poplar Beach. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. That was a wonderful report.
Oh, it's not done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It could be done. I apologize. I get very passionate about Poplar Beach. It takes a lot of my time. We are getting close, though, I promise. In the interest of time, I won't read everything. We have so many community events that we do here that it filled 2 slides, and I'm sure that there's many more. I will say that the Sheriff's Office is and always will be committed to building and maintaining positive relationships with our community members. We do that through all kinds of different things. Just tonight before I came here, our members of our Sheriff's Activities League were in my office, and I didn't know why, and they had boxes of backpacks because they were giving out 70 backpacks to kids that otherwise would not have backpacks for school. And it's like, that's just Tuesday at the Sheriff's Office. Like, we're involved in so many different things. And so, one example is, again, it's on here, during the months of November and December, toys and books were collected, wrapped, and distributed at Cunha School, and given to 400 kids, many of whom probably would have had nothing for Christmas, which is horrible. And so, stories like that, again, as a parent and as a member of law enforcement, just really make me feel proud to be a part of the Sheriff's Office. We did a fentanyl presentation at the school to parents and staff. Fentanyl is just something horrible that everybody everywhere is dealing with right now. They were only able to do 1 presentation because the school year ended, but now the school's starting up again. They have plans to do several more of those and continue the education so that, a lack of awareness is not the reason that somebody loses a child. I also did want to talk about our partnerships with our allied agencies. Some examples of that I have bad grammar. We have the Junior Giants Baseball, which is a partnership with the Coastside Collaborative Committee, in which youth leadership, oh my gosh, there's so many. Youth Leadership Institute, ALAS, Coastside Hope, the Freedom Center, BHRS Half Moon Bay Clinic, the City of Half Moon Bay here, and the Half Moon Bay Library, among others, all participate. And then this one, which is really great, we partner with the Second Harvest Food Bank, and we were able in the fiscal year to provide approximately 1,500 pounds of food to approximately 2,800 members of the community. So that is definitely a win as well. Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of fly through this. Coffee with the Chief, which I mentioned earlier. We've done one. We did it at Cafe Society. I cold called the owner, Selena, who took my call, which was cool because she didn't know me at all. And I said, hey, I have this idea. I want to do Coffee with the Chief so people can get to know me. Because some of the feedback that I sometimes hear is that maybe I'm not accessible or reachable, which I disagree with. But I am happy to put myself out there any way I can to be those things, accessible and reachable. So back in June, we did the first one at Cafe Society because, again, they were nice enough to gratefully host us. We had members of the Half Moon Bay community as well as the unincorporated sides come. And I was asked to do it every month. I said, I don't know that I can commit to that. So I think I'm going to try and do it every 2 months, which is perfect timing because now that we've gotten through this, my to-do list tomorrow is to figure out for this month where we're going to have our next one. Probably somewhere unincorporated, just to be fair. But I am very partial to the coffee at Cafe Society, so we'll definitely be back there again in the near future. Along those same lines with accessibility, if anybody doesn't know, I'm big on Nextdoor, and I love sharing all of the exploits of everything that we do on there. And so again, sometimes that feedback of like, we don't know what you're doing, we don't know where you are, follow me on Nextdoor, or whatever the verbiage is. Check out my Nextdoor page, because not every day, but very often I like to share what the deputies are doing here on the coast. And that's a great way, not only to see what we're doing, but if you have a question or something, people send me messages and I answer them. And I think it's pretty unique. People don't often feel like they have a direct line to to the chief. And I might have just cursed myself because now I'm going to get 1,000 messages. But if there's something that really bothers you, feel free to send me a message. And if we can fix it, we'll certainly try. We included that because I couldn't say it any better myself. That was a great story. And they did it on their own. I didn't pay off anybody. That was the story that they made. So if you guys haven't seen it, please do come back to the substation. You don't have to do it tonight, but you can. But come back during the daytime and check out our amazing mural. And I do definitely want to thank the Boys and Girls Club and Jill Jacobson for partnering with me on that project. Again, it was sort of a crazy idea that the city manager is my witness. I came up with like the first day I was here and said, our lobby's kind of bland. I think we need like a mural. They probably thought it was crazy. And I found the perfect partner to create, I think, something really beautiful. So, and that'll be there as long as the building is. So that's pretty cool for the girls, and I think they were really proud of it. This is what my boss spoke to a little bit earlier. I don't want to diminish it by flying through, but I don't want to keep us that late. So I will just say the swim class was something that the sheriff came up with on her own, for me that they were going to be doing as a response to the drownings that we had here on the coast. And I supported it like I support any program. It seemed like a good idea. And I have to say that when I actually went to the high school and saw the kids learning how to swim, it really hit me. I wasn't the chief, I wasn't the captain, I was a mom. And they all told me to tell this story, and I said, I don't want to do it because I'm going to cry. But I was looking at all these kids, and I just kept thinking of my kids and how completely unfathomable it would be for somebody to lose their child just because they didn't know how to swim. I mean, adults too, but for me, I was seeing the kids because we started with kids, and I think we're going to be doing it with adults as well. But to think that could make the difference between somebody getting to live a full and fulfilling life and not, by taking a couple swim lessons is just, it really hit me. And I called her afterwards and I said, look, I'm not just telling you this because you're my boss. I'm telling you this because I was just flying the flag, but I have to tell you, this is amazing. You're literally saving people's lives. And I truly feel that way, and I think it's a fantastic program. The youth defensive driving training is along those same lines, with that kind of full picture of not just responding to crimes, but identifying what we can do proactively to prevent them from happening in the first place. No parent should have to get that phone call that their child was, driving recklessly or lost control of their car and they're not coming home. Granted, this is not in and of itself going to stop that, but hopefully it's going to add education to these young drivers to show them how to be safe drivers, responsible drivers, and to be able to get home safe to their parents. So these are programs that we just started that we're going to continue doing, and I think they're fantastic. And I really honestly do think that it's going to save some lives, and it's going to allow some kids to grow up that maybe wouldn't have without them. So kudos to my boss on that. All right, we're close to the end, I promise. 3-foot rule. Somebody here was talking about, maybe she left, walking. I thought she mentioned biking, but I might have made that up. We have this thing, the 3-foot rule, which I included because it is new, and there's a lot of confusion about it. Admittedly, I was a little bit confused too. So I broke it down to as succinct and simple as I could make it. Basically, it's about the distance between cars and bikes going the same direction, and that bikes should not be speeding by cars should not be speeding by bikes within 3 feet. I myself am not much of a bicyclist. We go back to not being an outdoorsy person. But I can imagine how scary it would be to have a car speeding by with less than 3 feet between me on a bike. So I think this is actually a really good, I think it's a good rule. Basically, what it breaks down to is that if this happens, you can file a claim in our online reporting system under bike complaints. The report is auto-generated to the Records Bureau. A records supervisor will review the report and then send it to the respective bureau, because it could have happened in Millbrae, it could have happened here, could have happened in Woodside. So they need to make sure it gets to the correct jurisdictional area, and then the sergeant will assign a deputy to investigate the matter, to make sure that we don't have somebody that, consistently we're getting reports of the same person doing this to bikes. And it is important to mention that, this doesn't absolve people in cars from, breaking the law. We don't want to see you driving over double yellows or going the wrong way in traffic. You still have to follow all the other rules of the road, but just be mindful whether you have to slow down or legally, whatever you have to do to just give bikes the appropriate amount of space so that they can feel safe. The storms, again, another thing that would not be an annual report without mentioning the horrible storms. I had not been here that long when that happened, so I'm really, really hoping that's just not a normal winter here on the coast, but I'll let you know in a couple months. I thought it would be a good time to mention the SMC alerts. If you haven't already signed up, I don't know if anyone can use that QR code, but please sign up or just Google San Mateo County SMC alerts. It's very easy to sign up, and it's a great way to get notifications, especially during times like this where roads may be closed or sinkholes or wind or God knows what else we all dealt with at that time. We already talked about Nextdoor. I skipped ahead. Again, I share everything on there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The way that it came about was after the shooting incident at the earlier part of the year. A lot of parents reached out to me and they said, we don't feel like your communication with the schools, was adequate. And I took the calls of every single person that called. A lot of them were shocked that they were talking to me and not just some deputy. Not to diminish our deputies, they're fantastic, but I guess they didn't think that they would get straight through to me. I talked to all of them and I heard them, and they were right. I didn't have the relationships built with our school districts and our school administrators at that time. As I shared with them, I don't know that that was really a piece of that, but it did shine a light on something that I wanted to make sure I cultivated moving forward. So we all have all of our numbers now. So no matter what happens, if there's even a slight chance anything's related to anything with a school, I now call everybody. I think they all know me very well now at this point. We're almost done, I promise. Transparency portal. That's been around since the spring of 2022, so relatively new. You can go on that. Again, Google it. San Mateo County Sheriff's Office Transparency Portal. I tested it to make sure I was giving you good information. It's very easy to find. It's the first one that comes up. And so for anybody that's interested in anything to do with employee demographics, calls for service, complaints, IA investigations, use of force, evictions, crimes, arrests, corrections, or RIPA data, this is your one-stop shop for all of those things, and it's updated all the time. So there is that. Last thing I want to talk about, kind of like a soft introduction, I'll say, is automatic license plate readers, ALPR. We don't have them here in the city of Half Moon Bay. It's something that, especially the last couple months, has kind of come up in conversation. And it's something that I would like to have a longer talk about, not tonight, at some point in the future. I am ready as soon as I feel like, or as soon as you all say that you're interested in hearing it. I'm ready with tons of information and representatives from the company Flock that we can tell you everything and more that you would want to know about automated license plate readers. I think it's important to mention that they're not only good for finding stolen cars, they're good for so many different investigative things, whether it's tracking, residential or auto burglary suspects. finding people or finding dangerous people that are in vehicles. And one thing that people often don't think about is it can be a preventative measure. If somebody calls and said, my child just took the car, maybe not child, my adult child took the car, they're suicidal, and I saw them driving, north on 1, and I think they're gonna kill themselves. We have the license plate. We do have license plate readers outside on the unincorporated parts of the coast, just not in the city, and we use them all the time. And we have had that happen where we've been able to find people, despondent, maybe on the cliffs, and get them the help that they need, and, in theory, like save them from doing something that cannot be undone. So license plate readers are not one function, they're many functions. And a lot of the issues that we've had this year, whether it be the, graffiti to the beautiful murals downtown, auto burglaries, residential burglaries, there's many things that I think they would really, really help with. I know the downtown business owners seem like they're very on board with them. So again, for a later time, I would definitely like to talk more about it if you all would be interested. And lastly, I do want to just say, because I know that this is something that comes up sometimes when we're talking about this, is there's a concern that we will share this information, with private parties, which we won't. It's kept for 30 days and then it's gone, deleted. We do not share with other states because other states may not feel the way that we feel about certain laws. So we don't do that. And it is absolutely unequivocally not used for anything to do with immigration status. It is not used to find somebody that may have, illegally gotten an abortion or whatever has become of that. There are probably states that do use this for that, but we are not one of them. And it's not a Half Moon Bay thing. It's nobody in the state of California can use it for those functions. So anybody that has that in their mind as a concern with this technology, I can assure you that is not what this is for. This is simply a tool that can help us solve the people that are victimizing the people that live here in Half Moon Bay and help us stop criminals and solve crimes. And now that's it. I promise, I'm all done.
Thank you very much, Chief Alvin. Do we have questions from council members or comments?
Yes. Is there any effort to make sure that as much as possible, the same deputies serve in Half Moon Bay so that we don't rotate through deputies that are not familiar with the city?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was having that exact conversation with the sheriffs earlier today. I mean, I don't want to put my boss on the spot to make any promises that he has to be held to, but there has been conversation about doing shift bidding, moving deputies around based on where they want to work in seniority. But we must be like on the same wavelength because I brought this up earlier today and I said, look, everything that we stand for with these communities, with our bureaus, is wanting them to feel like we're their local community police department. If we do shift bids and I'm changing my deputies every 6 months, that completely flies in the face of everything that we're trying to achieve here. Not to mention, if you're only here for 6 months, by the time you really kind of are starting to understand the community, you're going to a different community. So I am with you. I am on the same wavelength as you. But one of the things that we talked about is that we're still working this out. We don't know what it's going to look like. And that perhaps maybe we can look at including language to say that, hey, if you're going to choose to work in one of the bureaus, you're not going to leave every 6 months. You're going to commit to staying there for maybe like 2 years or something. We actually do have a meeting scheduled. Is it this week or next week? This week. The topic of which is just to talk about what this shift bid process is going to look like. Because there are so many things that we have to account for. How many training officers we have on a team, how many SWAT members, because we can't have a whole team go vacant if there's a SWAT call out. So I promise you, this is important to me as it is to you, and I'm going to do everything I can to advocate for some measures being put in place so that we don't have what you're afraid of.
Thank you.
I'll just add into it, that is a very important topic, and this topic of shift bids has come up recently. There's been a desire within the office to explore this. Several police agencies and other sheriff's offices have what's called a seniority-based shift bidding system. The idea is for equitable process to allow people opportunities to work in different areas, and so they use seniority kind of as that tool, so to speak, to allow for equitability, based on your time in the office. That being said, certainly as we look at this, it is important for us to make sure that we keep continuity in our different bureaus. And so, part of that is us coming up with acceptable language that still allows for, minimal disruption. That being said, though, the kind of bigger, more global perspective of this really is that, we're really looking under the new sheriff and this executive team is all about changing the culture in the sense that, we think we have a good culture. It can always be better because in this business, we're always striving to be better, plain and simple. But really creating that mindset in every deputy so that we can place them in Half Moon Bay or Millbrae or any place, and they're going to provide that level of service. They're going to understand. They're going to quickly adapt to that community and provide that level of service and, go beyond the call, because that mantra is instilled in all of them. And so I think that speaks to really any one of our communities. But we do have a vested interest in trying to keep a level of continuity in our contract cities.
Good.
Not question, but actually a comment. I just want to say that I'm very happy, to see the engagement of our deputies here on the coast. And very happy when I see Captain Albin, around town. Visiting our coffee shops, restaurants, or engaging, conversation with community members. And that's something we have been asking for, the engagement for community members to get to know who you are. And actually a question, do you show one of the pages, all the deputies, officers here on the coast? Would it be possible to have them on our city page? Or have them, so, when somebody visits the city page, they get to know who, our deputies here on the coast. Yes, for more community engagement, yes, to get to know each other and learning about, so we can relate more to them.
Yeah.
The ones that are veterans, Navy, Army. So yes, we can feel more like building a relationship with them. And of course, if they stay here, on a 2-year contract in the coast, even better. So we are be more familiar with our community.
I think maybe something that we can do is, I can work with the city and maybe, because, you do the city newsletters, maybe we can feature a different deputy.
Perfect.
Yeah, to learn a little bit about them. I mean, that would be 30 city newsletters, so one less thing to have to look for material.
Well, I appreciate you both being here, and I really feel you're doing a great job redefining community policing out here. And that's something we've been, looking forward to for a long time. And that's a major transformation and just humanizing the relationships. It's those little things, walking around, showing up on Nextdoor. I really admire you for that. It's got many perils. So, but yeah, you're open to speaking with people, getting feedback. One thing on the automated license plate recognition system, I remember we did have a presentation. So I think, folks, there were some negative legacies, right? And I think people would be a lot more amenable to hearing about it. I think it would be better received if the presentation came from you and not the company, because I do have a memory of the company presentation, and something about it just felt very militaristic, whatever it was. And maybe it's just the person, whatever, who's doing it. But I don't think the technology, we don't need that. People just want to feel that the information will be safe, and all the positive uses of it and the examples would be great. And I think, I think people would actually be a lot more amenable to another presentation on that. So,
Well, I mean, that's certainly great to hear. I'd be more than happy to have it. I probably will have them come just as a backup in case any questions come up that I don't know how to answer. I will say that I had printed out today, the Detective Bureau was good enough to give me just some recent incidents of ALPR wins on the coast. And so I had about 6 different incidents, but in the spirit of not keeping us here all night, I skipped them. But we have, you know, it would be very doable. And we have so many good wins using ALPRs, again, outside of the city, here on the coast still. That, you know, like I said in my presentation, if you would be open to hearing it, I'm certainly happy to share that with you.
And it also makes a lot of sense because I look at the reports, crime reports, and a lot of the worst stuff going on is really from outsiders on weekends, and people come in partying on whatever, drugs, alcohol. And so, yeah, those are the kind of things we'd love, which that really applies to very well. And those are the kinds of crimes that upsets the people most.
And the geography of Half Moon Bay is
Right.
perfect because there's only so many ways in and out.
Right.
So we cover those, then, you know.
Yeah, great, okay, thanks.
I just want to say I'm glad you're here, and I think you have set just the right tone, given, where we are in our community. And I like your approach. It's warm and friendly and inviting, and I see you doing a lot of hard work. And I'm just really, really appreciative, and look forward to our partnership.
The feeling is mutual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually a question. The PERT team, what percentage, and I know you don't have these figures with you, of those calls are at night, after 6 p.m. or after 8 p.m.? Or I know our CARES team only works during the day up until.
I know. I wish they were 24 hours.
Yeah, I do too, and I'm going to be pushing for that. But right now it's not. So I'm just curious, with what has your experience been with the PERT team after hours, in the evening hours?
I will say it's not impossible to pull that stat, so I can get it to you, probably tomorrow. But, anecdotally, I will say that, oftentimes people that are in crisis, you think of what things can cause it. Maybe they're off their meds, maybe they're drinking alcohol, maybe they're using drugs. And, all of us, we all know people talk about more bad things happen at night. And so I would guess anecdotally that there probably is maybe more at night, but it's just kind of my gut instinct. But I can definitely get you the figures and we can see what the numbers say.
Great, I appreciate that. That's wonderful.
Well,
And then the other
it makes sense at night people have had more alcohol and
Right?
drugs.
Exactly,
So
that's what
it's
I'm
kinda
thinking.
cumulative
Yes.
effect,
I
yeah.
mean, I don't want to misspeak, but that's what I'm
That's
thinking.
kind of sense.
Yeah.
I love the suggestions about having the deputies' faces in our newsletter and on our website. It would also be nice to be able to meet with the deputies as well as yourself. And if there's any way you could have coffee with a deputy.
They were all there. I'll change the name.
Yeah, well, but you're only going to do it every 2 months, right? Which is, I'm not saying you should do it more, but I'm wondering if not all the deputies were there, but one deputy a month.
Oh, I see.
Do you know, just more frequent coffees with our sheriffs and our deputies? That's a thought.
I will commit to working on it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I would just add one thing into that, because I think there's so many existing frameworks, right, within the community, and I saw this in the previous community where I worked, because a lot of times, right, they didn't want to hear from me when I was a chief. They've heard from me so many times at city council meetings. They really want to hear from those folks out there patrolling their streets, right? And so we really made a push, and I think this is something I can talk with Captain Alvin, but if you have community meetings, whether it's a neighborhood association or something of that nature, where you want a deputy to come out, a deputy that works that area of town, and talk to you a little bit about the things that they're seeing and, tips to help keep you safe. I know that, that's something that certainly we can work with Captain Alva, but use those neighborhood associations and those things and know that we are here for you. And so if those meetings are there to spread the word, if you have an existing meeting or something that meets that, be happy to have a deputy that works in that area to come out and talk to folks.
I think that's really important because it only takes a few posts on Nextdoor, about, an incident, and people just start freaking out. And so a lot of what people are feeling are just like, shared sort of, group perceptions rather than the facts. And so periodically meeting with people and just hearing from you, like what you think is going on, I think goes, a long way to diffusing that sort of thing.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And one more question. Here on the coast, it's Spanish or English. And I'm wondering, do the deputies, are they required to speak Spanish as well as English if they're working here on the coast?
It's not a requirement, but it certainly is a selling point. So you got me. This is one thing I wasn't prepared for. I believe, it's been my goal, I believe that we have somebody on every team that speaks Spanish. Do we have someone that speaks Spanish on every team?
The news person coming out of the program on the 20th will be Spanish.
So now every team?
Not every team. No, this team will.
Okay, he works at night, he doesn't know. I'm gonna check, all due respect, you're fantastic. I'm gonna check and see, but earlier this year, I know that we did have somebody that spoke Spanish on every team for that exact reason. So I'll look at it. I haven't thought about that.
Thanks.
I'll
It
check.
is so critical. One of the incidents we had here many years ago with the death of someone who was mentally ill was a Latino.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just having the language available might make some difference.
We have a number of people that speak Spanish, so I'll look at how it shakes out.
Great.
That is the goal for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for a wonderful presentation.
I'll make it shorter next year. They said
No,
take
it
as
was
long as
great.
you want.
It was great. Okay.
We should call for public comment just in case
Yes.
there's any public comment.
Is there any public comment?
Nothing online.
I don't see anything
And
online.
Mayor, I would be,
Here is someone.
can you go to the mic, please?
Thank you. This has been very enlightening. Everybody's got something to say. Our great police chief and is very approachable. I'm so happy about that. You've heard from various members tonight voicing their concerns about various issues. What happens now? Where do these comments go and how are they processed? Do they end up being followed up on next door, or is there any summary of what actions will be taken or addressed or concerns?
There is no formal process for it. It depends on the nature of the comment. There are people that will come in and speak about something that's particular to their neighborhood. And generally, if it's something like that, then someone from staff will get in touch with that person and talk to them about the issue. I am always available. I will have coffee, I will have lunch, I won't have a drink because it makes me too tired. But I will meet with anybody over any issue in our town. My email is on the website. You can reach me 24/7, and I respond within 24 hours. And that's true for anybody else on the council. Our staff is also very, very receptive. So if you have an issue that is pressing, just follow up with it.
Okay, and that also goes for Chief Albin, I guess. Very accessible.
Well, I mean, I pointed to you like 3
Yes,
times
you
during
did.
my,
Yes,
so
you
you should
did.
feel heard.
Yes,
But,
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, generally for me, because in this role I am spread kind of thin.
Right.
As soon as I hear things, I usually write them down. You can ask my sergeants. I send a lot of emails and say, hey, this came up. We're going to need to, pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Were you the one that, you brought up blinkers, right?
Yes, I did.
I told him right when he walked in, I said, hey,
Yes.
make sure everyone's using their blinkers. So
Yeah,
it was immediate, that feedback. But I mean, all I can say is, I hear everything that people tell me. I share it with my troops on all the different teams. And then hopefully you should see whatever the issue is starting to be resolved in the community. If it isn't, come to the front desk during the day and ask to talk to a sergeant, or send me a message on Nextdoor, and we'll work on it.
Well, I'm great that there's such accessibility to our police force. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think,
If I could just add one
Yes.
comment. I would just be remiss not to thank Captain Albin and thank the Sheriff's Office for providing her to us. I've gotten to know all of our captains over the years, and they've been great in different ways, but Captain Albin is so invested in this community. We talk multiple times. She gets frustrated because I'm in meetings a lot, and I think she's like, just pick up your phone, man. But we are in constant communication. She thinks about this community as much as any of us do. And I think that speaks to a lot to her commitment and what we've seen tonight. And to those questions, she's thinking about this place 24/7 and wants to make this a better place. So we're just grateful for her. We hope she's here a really long time. What do you call it?
Shift bids.
Yeah, no shift bids for Captain
Doesn't
Albin.
apply to the captains.
Perfect.
We get to put them where they're.
I just want to publicly thank
give
her.
her all the raises and promotions you want, but don't take her away.
I always say this, the only way you lose it is she's promoting up through the ranks at some point, and we want that. We think Rebecca has a high ceiling, but we'll try to control that for a while. We'll try to, keep her at the level where she's at right now so she can stay here for a little while.
She is truly a member of our leadership team here, and we're grateful for her. So thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call for a 5-minute break. Let's be back at 20 of 10, please. Thank you. Our farm worker memorial and remembrance from the committee. Okay, sorry, we did not finish up with the law enforcement. Can we have a motion, please?
I move that we accept the FY 22-23 annual report on law enforcement services and activities.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And now we move on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Julissa Acosta. I'm the Community Services Analyst with the Economic and Community Vitality Division at the City Manager's Office. And I'm here to talk to you about the Farm Worker Memorial and Remembrance Advisory Committee. Staff would like to update Council on the formation of this committee that we intend to start receiving applications starting tomorrow and until September 8th. The committee will assist in the planning and development of a permanent Farm Worker Memorial and the one-year remembrance ceremony to honor the victims that lost their lives in the January 23rd shooting earlier this year. As council members directed staff to support the community and provide a space that embraces healing and resilience for the community, where family members, friends, and relatives of those that were deceased can come and pay their respect and honor their lives. City Council knows that staff work tirelessly with other organizations, nonprofits, and other government agencies to support services. The Standardized Victims Fund was adopted and established to help with the long-term needs. And this is just another layer of support that we offer to the community. I would like to share with you the purpose of the committee. It is first and foremost to develop recommendations for selecting the location and inform the design of the future memorial whatever that may be, that will be determined by the committee members. We would also like to have the committee members serve as communication liaisons between the city, the committee, and the general community stakeholders on the information that is relevant to the memorial. And we also hope that they inform the one-year remembrance ceremony for this. The committee will convene monthly, and we hope that they continue convening monthly until the RFQ submissions are evaluated, meaning they'll help us set up the criteria, they'll help us set us the guidelines, inform the design, and also help support city staff in terms of evaluating the applications that we receive when the time comes. And obviously, we will present a final recommendation to City Council when that is determined. It is important to note that this process is not intended to be completed to coincide with the one-year remembrance ceremony. It won't happen. We are not in a rush to do this. We really want to do it right. We want to make sure it's done carefully and respectfully and culturally appropriate to both of the cultures that were impacted by this. And so that's why we're definitely taking our time and making sure it's done with the utmost respect to both cultures. For this committee, we would like to explain what the membership will consist of. It's a maximum of 12 members with representatives including the Asian Pacific Islander and Latino communities, and will be drawn from the following. We would like to include relatives of victims, 2 to 4 members, representatives from the farm worker community, 2 to 4 members, as well as representatives from nonprofit organizations, 2 organizations, and 2 members of the community at large. We intend also to collaborate with those who may wish to remain anonymous for respecting their privacy. Staff has already talked about reaching out to specific individuals who might just wish to contribute but might not want to engage in a larger group setting just to respect their privacy. We are lucky to say that we have great partners, many nonprofits, and we have really good relationship with our Chinese and Latino farm worker community, and so we'll reach out to them. And through the DA's Victim Service Unit, we'll reach out to those, to the next of kin and family members of the deceased to see if they wish to contribute information to the forming of the memorial design. Just as another highlight, for the purpose of this committee, we would like to give preference to coastside residents. Not saying that we won't accept external, but because our community is very unique, we'd like to give the preference to those who really live and breathe this community. So I think that's the briefing of my presentation. Like I mentioned earlier, applications will open tomorrow and will be opened until September 8th. They will be available on our website. People can contact me directly, but we'll also have hard copies, applications in different languages at City Hall for folks who want to just come in and grab an application. City staff, a team of city staff will decide who the community members are, and we'll reach out to them to arrange convenings. So at this point, I'm happy to take any questions.
I have one thought, and that is many communities across the United States have gone through similar shootings, mass shootings, and tragedies. And I'm wondering if we are including some of the work that they have done to build a memorial in our considerations. I think we can learn from others, and it might at least know what other people have done.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Absolutely. My research, just even to inform this staff report for you, included a lot of what other organizations, what other cities, what other entities have done. And I don't necessarily know that there are best practices because everybody is different, but I've definitely taken a lot of information from many other jurisdictions and locations with similar situations have happened, just to make sure that we truly respect the purpose of this memorial.
Yes, I think my thinking is there are many different ways to do a memorial. You can have a mural, you can have a painting, you can have a piece of sculpture, you can have a plaque. There are a lot of different ways to look at it, and it never hurts to get ideas from outside on, what other people have done and what's been successful. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Other members of council have anything to say? Here's a comment from Director Reddick.
I just want to say how much I appreciate your very thoughtful approach and your sensitivity, to the cultural issues as well as the personal issues and the community issues. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have public comment? Not seeing any public comment.
No public comment.
Okay, city manager, did you have something?
I just wanted to make one city manager comment. One of the things that you may note from the staff report and from the discussion is about the cost and the funding. And we did not set aside funding in the budget for this year. We want this to be organic. We want it to be based on the community need and desire. And once that's been figured out, we'll obviously get some cost estimates. We'll talk about what the city can do. But I think I'm pretty confident that as this comes together, we'll be able to raise funds from the community, and this can be a real community effort. And I think it'll be more meaningful that way as well. So that is, it's not that it's not been thought about. We want this to be done organically, and that will come up at some point and obviously be a really important part of the process as well.
Great.
Actually, talking about funding, there's a member of the community who's been interested, in actually putting up a plaque, with a name of, the farm workers that were, that were killed this year. So, once we're ready for that, I'll give you the information so you can reach out to the person that is very interested in doing this.
Okay, thank you, Julissa. And now I think we move on to Climate Adaptation Plan Contract Award.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Veronica Vostnak, Public Works and Sustainability Programs Manager, and I'm here. I'll make this presentation short, but it's a contract award for our Climate Action Adaptation Plan, Phase 2, our Climate Adaptation Plan. So I'll go over a little bit of context and timeline, and then go over the project scope, what we're looking to do with this project, our selection process to ultimately select the selected consultant, Integral Incorporated, and Blue Point Planning, and we'll close out with our recommendation. So a little bit of context. We've talked a lot about our CAAP, our CAP, our Climate Action and Adaptation Plans. We have this broken out into two phases, which I'll talk about why a little bit on the next slide. But just for sake of clarity, I wanted to go, this can sometimes be a point of confusion. So we have our Climate Action Plan, which is our CAP Phase 1. An action plan looks at outlining strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And these strategies are really going to be a partnership between the community and the city, and we'll look at individual actions and how we can change our behavior and our policies together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce the impacts of climate change. We had a draft available for the public at the end of 2022, And we will have, we're working on a little bit of a change to the draft, which will be out in the next week or two. And that draft will be before the council for comments at the September 19th meeting. So stay tuned for a little bit more information about that in about a month. But what we're talking about today is the climate adaptation plan. Climate adaptation is looking at adapting to climate impacts. So whether that's increased wildfire, flooding, sea level rise, high heat, air quality issues, a lot of things that we unfortunately have seen firsthand in the past year, 2-3 years, looking at adapting to those climate impacts that we see today and expect to see more and more as time goes on. This adaptation work is a little bit bigger. This is not so much individual action, but more government and organizations working together to mitigate those impacts, specifically related to health and safety. A little bit of a timeline. So originally we planned to do the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan together. And as a part of that, we received some funding from San Mateo County to do some pre-outreach with community-based organizations. This outreach was done with a focus on traditionally underserved communities, so Latino, senior, and youth populations. We wanted to do this outreach prior to doing the work so that we could frame the work that we're doing with what we heard from those communities to make sure that it's as equitable as possible and taking their input into consideration, which is much harder to get. So after that outreach was completed in 2020, staff released a request for proposals for the combined climate action adaptation plan. The timing was pretty awful. It was around March 2020 when we planned to award the contract, and we all know what happened then. So we lost our funding and focused on phase 1, so that's climate action, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The reason that we focused on the climate action piece, the first A, was we had an opportunity to leverage free technical assistance that was available to us through San Mateo County. So staff focused our efforts on that and ultimately decided to split the climate action plan and the adaptation plan in order to not delay the ultimate adoption and implementation of the climate action, waiting for this adaptation piece, which requires quite a bit more technical work and a little bit of, frankly, funding to get it completed at the way that we felt was necessary. So there was $200,000 budgeted this fiscal year for this work to be completed. And this, looking at the project scope, will be continuing that outreach and engagement that we did prior to the work throughout the climate action plan process. So we will be continuing to work with those community-based organizations and reaching out to the public to affirm that what we've heard from the beginning remains true. And that we're reflecting that input the way that we should be in the planning. And then we'll be simultaneously be doing a vulnerability and risk assessment. So taking a look at, there are a lot of plans related to sea level rise and climate adaptation that are available. Looking at that, seeing where there are gaps, and ultimately prioritizing which climate risks will be the most important or the most realistic for the city to address. Through that process, we'll start to work on adaptation strategies, which will be very much formed by that vulnerability and risk assessment and the outreach that we'll be doing, and then ultimately helping with the plan, the drafting the plan and the adoption of that plan. So staff released an RFP, a request for proposals, on April 24th. We received 6 proposals on May 31st, and an internal staff evaluation committee scored those written proposals. We chose the top 3 to interview with us on the week of June 26th, and conducted those interviews and scored those interviews. Ultimately, Integral Consulting and Blue Point Planning were our top scoring consultant. They have really strong technical staff, and they have a lot of experience in this particular area. Here in Half Moon Bay, they've done our Miramontes Point Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment, which was adopted earlier this year. we have some staff that worked on our local coastal plan. Integral is also currently working on the SAM plant flood modeling and adaptation strategies. And they were also the selected consultant for the San Mateo South Coast Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment, which looked at a little bit of Half Moon Bay down through Pescadero. Beyond Half Moon Bay, they also have a lot of experience in the Santa Cruz area, and they have a particular expertise in coastal adaptation. So their technical expertise really made them stand out from some of the other proposers. And they have subcontracted with Blue Point Planning, who has done some work in the area, including with our Parks Master Plan. And they had a really great proposal to focus on the outreach. They had some really interesting ideas surrounding citizen science events and things that just sounded a little bit more interesting and engaging than what we have seen happen in the past. So they worked with us doing outreach on our Parks Master Plan and did a really fantastic job. So we feel really great about this, this combined effort between Integral and Blue Point Planning. And they were our top scoring consultant after both for the written and the interview process. So all that to say, my recommendation for you all tonight is to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Integral Consulting to develop a climate adaptation plan, or the CAP Phase 2, in an amount not to exceed $200,000. I'll take any questions.
Questions?
No, just have a comment.
Comments?
Yeah, I don't think we can go wrong with this team, right? I mean, they have very deep experience, both in the planning and the science, so looks like a good call. That's all I wanted to say, so.
Also like the work they've been doing with Sam. They're doing a really good job there, so. And Maz has experience with them.
I do, and I will say that I think the team did a great job vetting the consultants. The top two choices were very close, but I think Integral, with their approach, their team, and what they've shown us, it made a lot of sense. So I'm on board with this recommendation as well, obviously.
Great, wonderful. I will entertain a motion then. Do we have public comment? No, we have no public comment. May I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Integrals Consulting, Inc. to develop a climate adaptation plan in an amount not to exceed $200,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to item 3D. Yes, update and discussion of Chapter 3.3, minimum wage in the Half Moon Bay Municipal Code.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will give just a very, very brief report. This is really an opportunity for you all to have a discussion on this topic. I hope the staff report provided some good information and background for you. For the sake of those watching, I will just provide a quick summary. In 2020, the city adopted its own local minimum wage ordinance. At the time, the state minimum wage, which was applicable to Half Moon Bay, was at $12 and $13 per hour. The goal of our minimum wage ordinance was to immediately increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour and then apply cost of living increases based on the consumer price index over the future with no sunset. The current minimum wage in Half Moon Bay is $16.45 for all workers in any size company. We will be calculating the minimum wage that will be effective January 1st of 2024 next month, because we base it on the August consumer price index data. But our estimates based on this year is it'll likely be around a 3% increase, which should put us close to $17 per hour. The city of West Hollywood in Southern California recently raised their minimum wage to $19.08 per hour, which makes them the highest minimum wage in California, and I believe in the country. In the Bay Area, Emeryville is at $18.68 per hour, and in San Mateo County, Redwood City is at 17. They, of course, like others, will be increasing January 1st as well. The state minimum wage is currently $15.50 per hour for all employees across all size businesses, and that will go up to $16 an hour starting January 1st of 2024. The city has the ability to amend its ordinance or change it to impose different requirements or calculations to our minimum wage. There are very, very few exceptions on who it applies to. So any minimum wage that we select would apply to, I'll spare you the exceptions, essentially every worker in Half Moon Bay. Just for the record, San Mateo County does not have a minimum wage ordinance, so they track with the state. And so there is some difference between unincorporated coastside and Half Moon Bay. So with that, Madam Mayor, you had brought this forward as something you wanted to discuss, so I'll turn the time over to you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I think if we don't stay on top of the issue of minimum wage and don't reconsider it on a regular basis, we are not being fair to our workers in town. We know that the cost of living here is outrageously high. I know what I pay the woman who cleans my house, and it's $40 an hour, which is not a lot of money. Not when you're working 3 hours for one person and then you're working 2 hours for another person. It's extremely difficult to live on the minimum wage as it is right now and has been. It's going to continue to be difficult. We don't have affordable housing here. We have lots of plans, and we will. I'm hoping in the next year to 2 years, we will actually see housing built and people moving into housing. But there are people suffering right now. And along with this discussion on increasing the minimum wage, which is something I would like to see happen, I would like us to have another discussion about rent control. Even if we're talking about it on a temporary basis, some sort of management. I mean, the woman that was talking tonight spoke about a $300 increase in her rent. She's already working 2 jobs. How people do it, I don't know. I just don't know. But that's sort of the gist of why I wanted to bring it up. So I'd like to hear from other people about what their thinking is.
I'm thinking a lot of things. Living wage in San Mateo County is actually $38, an hour. That's living wages. I mean, 50% of that is $19 an hour. We still, families, especially or essential workers, who are we actually in danger of losing. They're moving out. So we really need to think about, what are we going to do for this community? I mean, rent control is one thing. Wages, better wages than what we're offering. Last time we did that, 2019. Was it 2020? 2020?
We did the outreach work in 2019, and then it was adopted in 2020. It took effect January 1, 2021.
Yeah. So it's something to think about. The living wages, San Mateo County, $38. The closest we can get to that, is that the better it's going to be for our community. But we have to be able to, to make the rest of the community understand, that our essential workers, need living wages. So I'm actually 50% of living wages, $19 an hour. Sounds really good. right? I know it's not easy for businesses here in the community, but you know, our essential workers are struggling really bad. So it's just something to think about. 50% of living wages is still very low. It's still below poverty level here in San Mateo County.
I agree with Joaquin. I think $19 is a reasonable compromise for what we need for our essential workers. And when you said that the wage applies to essentially everybody, that does include all the farm workers, right?
It's not legal to exempt farm workers or to have different wages for them. You also can't exempt tipped workers, and maybe after your discussion, I'll share some of the dynamics that come from that, and that's some of the feedback we've got in the past. But really, the only exemption has to do with student learn workers, teenagers that are working a limited number of hours. Everyone else, it has to apply to them.
Thank you.
Well, I remember we did have a number of businesses the last time come to our council meeting and said this would drive them out of business. I do remember them specifically, and they're all still in business.
They're still in business.
So that's my comment, and I'm happy to bring us to a livable, as well, it's not a livable wage. So minimum really isn't enough, and I'll be interested in hearing from the chamber also as well, but yeah, so I'm open to whatever we think is doable for whatever reasons after we get all the other information and data. But 3% increase really isn't cutting it when the base to begin with was so low, right? So I think once in a while we're going to have to make some adjustments. So.
I'm happy to support $19 an hour as a discussion to bring out to the community. I definitely think the livable wage is much higher. I don't know if it's $25 or $30, but it's certainly a lot higher than people are getting paid now. And so I would be willing to take that as a starting point, $19 an hour, and take that discussion out.
I think that my feeling is that being on council is, I have a responsibility to not just be responsive to the community, but to be a leader and to see issues in the whole, what the whole community is suffering from. And yes, our business community is saying one thing, and our service workers are saying another thing. But if I look at the community as a whole, what I see is everybody's looking for employees, but nobody's willing to pay them. So if they're going to be going out of business, it's because one of the reasons they may be going out of business is that they're not willing to pay a living wage to somebody. So that's an argument that goes up against the business owner's argument that they can't afford it.
Well, yeah, everybody, complains about poverty and homelessness, and, the solution is to pay people more, bottom line. You pay people more so that they can live and afford the necessities of life.
In terms of a holistic solution, I would really like to hear from, the Downtown Business Association, but also, I remember we talked about this last time. Get the landlords together who are charging whatever monthly rents for their spaces and try and get them involved in this conversation. A lot of those buildings are totally paid for. So if we're a community, let's all look at this issue together. And if people feel like, they're you know, their margins are so tight that they can't keep a business together. Well, yeah, they're exposed to high rents too. So let's look at the whole situation and get all the stakeholders involved. And, you know, either you support people, community, and it's, we're talking about human beings. And as Joaquin has said, it's not all just about the money. So how do you help people survive? And the stories I hear of people having to hold down 2 or 3 jobs. And I just read a study that said, you know, rent is, housing is the biggest cost of living increase. 90% comprises 90% of all the cost of living increases. So how much we can change costs in housing, who knows? But we do have control over a reasonable wage. And yeah, I agree with the mayor. You know, we want to lead. And if you have, you know, not everyone can have a business. I would think every business person, if you're thinking about continuing a business, you should want to be able to pay people something a little more above the bare minimum wage. So that's what I think.
The thinking about getting the landlords together, is that something I've been asking for a couple of years. We need to know who our landlords are. We need to know how large the problem is. We hear from individuals, and I'm sure they're telling the truth, but I don't know how many people are out there being evicted. I don't know how many people are out there having their rent raised and abnormally. I don't know how many people are paying a reasonable amount. I just don't know. I don't have those figures. And I think, I don't know where we get them from. I don't know how we get them. But I think we're a small enough town, we ought to be able to get them. If somebody's a landlord, they've got a business license, right? No?
Not necessarily. Owning commercial property doesn't require you to have a business license, much like owning a home and renting it to an individual doesn't require a business license. So there are other ways to get this information, and you know, this is part of our priorities for this year, and that data is, we're working on it actively right now, and plan to bring back the rent control item in October. I do want to clarify, the comment Councilmember Brownstone made was about commercial landlords,
I was
correct?
just going to say, I want to
Okay.
distinguish between one, commercial and residential. Also, each business owner, they're paying somebody. So, you know, if we ask folks, who the heck are you paying? We'd like to bring those landlords into the conversation, see if they can give you a break. And they'll all be willing to let us know because, you know, it's in their interest. And you know what? It's worth the effort to try, you know, bring people into a room.
It is, and we might even be able to get money to help the landlords. You know, I don't have any problem with helping a landlord who's trying to do the right thing.
Well, I don't know about that, but I just would like to bring the landlords and hear their situations and why they can or cannot at least freeze their rents for the time being, and put the question out there.
I mean, we already focus, you know, on helping the businesses in the community, right? With the initiative with, you know, Karen and Erica, the Opportunity Center. You know, that's one thing. Is bringing more business into our community. Also about, you know, the Downtown Association doing more work, you know, downtown to attract more tourism. You know, engaging through our page, you know, the Chamber of Commerce about our local restaurants and the service industry, right? So we are working on to actually provide support for the local businesses. So, you know, I think, you know, that can lead, you know, to having better wages for, you know, for the service workers, you know, for restaurants, hotels, you know, essential workers. It's a collaboration to make sure that we survive in our community.
So I'm hearing pretty clear direction that we would like to pursue this. $19 an hour, it seems to be the consensus of where we want to kind of establish the discussion from. We have a great relationship with the Chamber and the Downtown Association. They're aware that this is starting to work, and I don't see them online tonight, but I'm sure tomorrow we'll be able to have some conversations. The Chamber's already working on some outreach to the businesses to find out what are people paying right now. Thinking back to the outreach we did in 2019, a lot of the feedback we got is that many of the businesses have to pay more than minimum wage just to be competitive to get employees. So let's find out what kind of pay is common out there. We already know that the biggest struggle is going to be for tipped workers because in a lot of our high-end restaurants and our very nice hotels, tipped workers make minimum wage, but their income is their tips, and many of them make six-figure salaries doing that. But there's some dynamics between the non-tipped workers and creating parity there that can create a lot of challenges. Based on our analysis in the past, there's not a lot we can do about that. There's not ways to finesse this. As I said, you set the minimum wage and it applies across the board. But we know the work that needs to happen, so we will start developing that plan. This is a pretty major undertaking. And so one of the things I'll be doing with the department heads is looking at the priorities and identifying maybe what needs to be pushed back a little bit in the timeline to give us the bandwidth to work on this, as it feels like this is a pretty urgent priority for this council. So I think I have the direction I need for staff. Catherine?
I just wanted to make sure we gave an opportunity for public comment if there's anyone.
Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment online? There's no public comment. All right, with that, are there any items for future discussion? We've got the rent control for future discussion, so that's set up for October anyway. And the idea of getting the landlords together can be part of that discussion, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think, again, that will involve the residential landlords, and then as part of our outreach on minimum wage, we'll be looking at ways to engage the commercial landlords that are supporting the businesses.
I think that, that the discussion needs to be broadened in a way so that it includes everyone in the community. I think...
Yeah, but they're in separate contexts, that's all. So if we're talking minimum wage, then we want to focus on commercial landlords, right?
Yeah.
Because their rents are high. If we're talking about rent control, right, then we're talking about residential landlords. I'm just saying just not having the conversations all together. There's separate conversations with different groups. That's all.
My feeling is that that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is we've got an existential crisis here. And it's a crisis in our community. It's a crisis across the nation. But it's certainly a crisis here for a lot of people. They are barely surviving. And that's our town. And maybe including both and all the discussions with the entire community might be a better way to approach it. That's all. It's a thought. I don't know how to actually execute that, but I think if you ask people to do the right thing, most times they do it. You don't agree?
I appreciate your optimism.
Yeah, I appreciate your optimism too, but it's not always worked that way.
It doesn't always, but you don't know until you ask them either.
Well, here's a glimmer of hope. I did see an article fairly recently, and I can't remember the name of the town or the city now, but they did bring the tenants and the landlords together for conversations and city staff. I just would have to Google,
Oh, I'd love to hear
tenants and landlords, meeting and talking.
Yeah.
But there is some place that made it work, and landlords were showing up. But we weren't having this discussion right now, and I totally forgot about it. But
Okay, with that, I believe we are, ups, not yet.
City council
And Mayor,
reports.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just one, before we move on from future discussion, possible agenda items, you actually had asked me about a potential agenda item, and I thought you might bring it up this evening regarding a letter of support.
Yes. I've got it written down somewhere.
We could also come back to it if, if you want to do the city council reports, then come back to this item.
Yeah, can we do city council reports first while I try to find it?
Speaking of glimmers of hope, I attended an age-friendly task force on medical facilities on the coast. And much to my amazement, Dignity Health, the county, and I'm drawing a blank. What's the big PPO?
Sutter?
No, not Sutter.
Kaiser.
Kaiser. We're all there in the same virtual room, and they started talking about forming a co-op that could actually produce an acute and urgent care facility on the coast. It's very, very early in the thoughts there, but it's, like I said, a glimmer of hope. I think it's a facility we really do need, and this might be the beginning of actually implementing that. So I just thought the community should know.
Thanks. And there was county representation there, Harvey?
The behavioral, forget his name, but it's the county health services.
So we can follow up also, the county's probably the best.
But it wasn't the new health officer?
No.
Santana, whatever her name is?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, the item that, any other members from council? I wanted to ask council support on was to support the governor's call for an amendment to the Constitution via a constitutional convention to call for measures to increase gun safety and to decrease gun violence. And I've got the 4 items listed someplace and can't find them, but one is increase the minimum wage from 18 to 21. A second one is to require background checks. A third is to disallow automatic weapons sold to individuals. And I can't remember what the 4th one was.
It's the waiting period.
Oh, a reasonable waiting period. So I have personally endorsed the idea of the amendment, but I wondered if the council would be willing to support writing a letter of support for Governor Newsom.
To have a constitutional convention?
Yes.
National.
Nationally, yes.
So that's
Okay.
An amendment to the Constitution that would provide for those 4 items.
You don't mean a national constitutional convention, do you?
I do.
Oh.
California state laws are pretty good, but the federal laws are not. And so Newsom has come up with this idea that if we amend the national constitution, that we will then have federal laws that will protect us.
Every time you hear about the possibility of a national constitutional convention, the right-wing people bring up all these things like a balanced budget amendment and essentially undoing the First Amendment, and I don't think we really want to have a national constitutional convention. It's just too dangerous.
It's a slippery slope worth researching, is all I'm saying, about the pros and cons. And I think I appreciate the governor's intention, but it does sound a bit rhetorical to me when he brings it up. But I'm just saying, it's that once you open that door, historically, it could be very strange, depending on what else is going on in the culture at that time when that convention's happening. So that's
It's a dangerous time, so you
Yeah.
gotta be careful.
Answers my question. The council is not for writing a letter of support, so I'll just write one for myself. Thank you all. Chickens. Chickens. Pragmatic, my foot.
You see what
Okay.
people miss if they don't stay up for the end of the meeting? This is good stuff.
No, I've never had a headline yet. No, not for any of the outrageous things I've done. I hope so. This meeting is adjourned.